Okay. We will open the meeting with the pledge, since it's election day especially. I happen to have a flag here, so I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Okay, since Dorothy put that in the minutes last time as well.
I know I wanted to make a correction to the minutes.
What's that?
I don't think we did the pledge last month.
I don't believe we did either.
Okay.
Also add another correction to the minutes since we're on.
Okay, no pledge.
And item concerning the Second Avenue item, front and back. Okay, item 2, Z20-08, Chair Chase stated he is abstaining from voting.
What page are you on?
It's page 205.
Okay.
Instead of the second line of the paragraph on item 2, the first line, first sentence of that paragraph, instead of across the street, it should say next door, just because it's adjacent to or next door to, but it's not across the street. My mother's property is next door. So,
Next door. Okay.
other than that, any other comments on the minutes?
No.
No.
Okay, since we did jump ahead, but we'll go ahead and approve the minutes. And I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then Robert, how did you want to handle the public forum? Do we want to wait till each item for anyone that wants to speak?
We needed to read, I'm sorry, excuse me. We needed to have you and Mr. Withers read in your conflict form into the record.
Okay.
That's attached to the minutes.
Is Stephen here?
No, I don't see him.
Okay. So I will go ahead and read mine.
Pull his again.
Okay, I'm Frank W. Chase. I live at 935 Oakdale Street, Windermere, Florida, 34786, Orange County, July. The date of that the vote occurred was July 24th, 2020. Sorry, July 21st, 2020. It's for the Development Review Board of the Town of Windermere. And the reason for my conflict was that this was for, well, I'll read all this. So I, Frank W. Chase, this is the disclosure portion. Disclosure of local officers' interest. I, Frank W. Chase, hereby disclose that on July 21st, 2020, a measure came or will come before the agency, which the DRB, Development Review Board of the Town of Windermere, which I may, in your special private gain or loss, and also inured to the special gain or loss of my relative, Joan W. Hargadon, who's my mother. So this was item Z20. Well, the measure before the agency and the nature of my conflict interest in the measure is as follows. Item Z20-8 regarding 711 West 2nd Avenue is adjacent to rental property owned by my mother, Joan W. Hargadon, and which is located at 727 West 2nd Avenue. I personally could have a future interest in the property located at 727 West 2nd Avenue. And I signed this on 7/21/20, Frank W. Chase III. Hopefully that's
Good.
good enough for this record.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Frank, or Chairman, as it relates to the public comment, we've had 3 people sign up. Prior to the meeting, we had 0 people sign up. We've had a lot of letters sent in on the various matters that you're going to be discussing tonight. Each person that I'm going to name can either use their 3 minutes now, or they can defer until the actual item is discussed. The first one we have is Frank Krenz. Frank, you're gonna you gotta, I'll unmute you, buddy.
Okay, am I on?
See,
Yes, sir.
Okay, the microbrewery, I'm
and
interested.
address for the record.
Again?
Never mind, go ahead.
Okay, this is Frank Krenz, 727 Forest Street. My topic is the microbrewery, which I look forward to. It's generally, I don't like to go anywhere I can't walk or ride my golf cart. I would like to know what the rules will be for that, or if that's even known. Would it be like Tim's, or would it be expanded hours, or is that all up for discussion?
That is all up for discussion, and it's within the conditional use that's going to be listed out, the hours and deliveries and so on and so forth.
Okay, well, generally I'm in favor of it, and that's really all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Krenz. The second one we have is Jonathan Hewells. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Do you like to defer or speaker's piece now?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'd like to defer until the hearing is conducted on the matter.
Thank you, sir. And then Brandy Haynes has listed her address, and then she'll defer on each item. So with that said, I'm ready to turn it over to Brad Cornelius. We do have the applicants on the meeting tonight. We do have a quorum. There is one thing that we need to address prior to the hearings on both of these items. Peter Fleck did some dock repair for Joseph Atta. He did speak to me about that. Again, it was just quick work. The outcome of this decision will have no financial gain or interest to Peter Fleck, so it's determined that there is no conflict at this time. But we just want to make sure that there is no appearance of impropriety. Getting your dock fixed has nothing to do with whether or not a building is constructed, nor a brewery is permitted, because I know Peter is not in that type of business. So with that said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brad, who will then turn it over to the applicants, and then we'll have some questions from DRB, I'm sure.
Robert, can you tell me who's on the board that's here? I see Jennifer.
Yes, sir.
And I've seen.
We have Jennifer Roper, Molly Rose, Peter Fleck, and yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Robert. And we'll go ahead and get started. So everyone knows who I am. I'm Brad Cornelius with Way Trim. I serve as the town planner. And this evening, what we have is two cases related to the proposed microbrewery tap room at 111 West Fifth Avenue. And these are, just so the board is aware, these are 2 separate hearings. And there'll need to be 2 separate votes, because one is for the conditional use, and I'll go into that here in just a moment. And the second case is for the major development, or for the site plan for the proposed commercial building. So we have 2 separate approvals or recommendations that we'll be looking for from the DRB with this case this evening. So we'll start here with the conditional use. So the conditional use, the case number is Z19-11. Again, the property is 111 West Fifth Avenue. The owner of the property is 111 Fifth Avenue LLC. The applicant is Mr. Andrew McGee. And as Robert said, Mr. McGee is online with us today, and he will have a presentation for you about his proposal, his operation. So what the request before you this evening is the microbrewery and the tap room, and it's in our staff report. It's one of these uses that is not clearly or identified within the town's code as being either allowed or prohibited. It's just one that's just not addressed. So the town code has the provision for those kinds of uses that allows the town to consider them and for the town council to approve them through a review process to assure that it's consistent with character and it's a positive thing for the community. So when we went, what was somewhat unusual here is because the request is related to a microbrewery with tap room, which is consumption of alcohol on premises, your code also has a requirement that if a proposed use with alcohol consumption on premises is less than 1,000 feet from a church, in this case, First Baptist Church of Windermere, or from another business that also serves by consumption on premise, which is Tim's Wine, which, as the board may recall, one of my very first hearings of the board was the Tim's Wine conditional use. So they're within 1,000 feet of those two situations. So in order for this to be permitted within the town, it also requires a conditional use. So what's happening here is we have both of these requests as part of this request because they're tied together. They're the same thing, asking for the permission for this proposed microbrewery and tap room. So that's why this is before you this evening. Under the code, the Development Review Board, for the conditional use, you have the right to review this, to provide a recommendation to town council, and you can place conditions on there as you see fit to assure consistency or make any other kind of recommendation you wish to do. So that, I just wanted to make that, might try to make that clear why this is before you this evening and how this is before you this evening. In terms of the conditional use, I will say I'm going to go kind of to high level in terms of the proposed operation. I'm going to leave the details to the applicant. He's much better equipped to address the details, but I will give you the high level overview of this. The first thing I want to make everyone aware of, if a conditional use for consumption of alcohol on premises is approved, there are standards within the code that would allow for that to be rescinded. And those standards are pretty straightforward. It's, one, if they violate a condition of the conditional use. Number two would be if there are more than 2 code enforcement violations on the property. And third is if there's more than 2 registered police incident reports in a calendar year. So there are mechanisms within your code if the conditional use is approved and the problems occur that aren't anticipated. There are mechanisms here to address that. And I thought that was important to bring that out. And also within your code, you do have standards that you look at conditional uses, similar to like a variance or certain standards to look at this. And I won't go through them all. They are in your staff report. But just from an overview standpoint, it's looking at, is this use, proposed? Will it operate consistent with the town and the character? Are there appropriate mitigation, if any, needed to offset maybe some impacts that people may be concerned of? So it's just assuring compatibility and a positive outcome for the town. And the standards are within your staff report. In terms of the type of operation, so I'm going to go a little bit out of order than what I have in the staff report because I think this is important. One of the first pieces that we looked at in working with the applicant and going through this process is, how do we assure the right classification for the type of use? So what we did in working with the town manager is we look at Orange County too to see how they address it and what are their standards. And so what we wanted to be sure is that, with this proposed use, it was truly more oriented to consumption on site and on-site sales as opposed to just an outright manufacturing facility. That was a concern. And in a way to manage that, and the applicant has actually acknowledged this, and he'll go into it with his presentation, I'm sure, is there limitations on the production. And that's what we looked at. We use the same from the Orange County Code, saying as long as you're under, in this case, it's 15,000 barrels per day. You'll hear from the applicant, he's nowhere near that number. He's significantly lower than that. And again, I'll let him present that part of his case. But he does meet that standard, that he's not a distribution center, he is a microbrewery. The other part that we looked at is in terms of how he would operate his business, and that there was a majority of his revenues coming in would be based on sales on site and consumption on site, as opposed to wholesaling and off site. So, and again, he'll address this, but he does state in his response that he'll be at a 75% consumption on premises and retail sales on premises versus 25% wholesale and delivery out. So he's within that, where he's primarily a business that's on site. It's not a primarily off site business. So we found that all to be consistent with to assure that that was the appropriate type of use with it. Related to the hours of operation, he has proposed hours of operations in your staff report. What I will present, again, I'll let him present in more detail, is the hours that he is requesting are consistent with the overall town's hours of ability to serve alcohol. So his requests are within just the general town code requirement of when you need to cut off the sale of alcohol. And again, I'll let Mr. McGee go into the details of those hours and how that'll be operated with that. Related to deliveries and that kind of issue, we have a little bit of crossover here with this. Speaking with Mr. McGee, and actually what they're going to look to do is actually have deliveries at the Windermere Market and use that for their deliveries to make sure it's not on West Fifth Avenue. It doesn't cause an issue. And that's allowed within your code. They will have to bring forward to the town as they go through permitting, basically a shared use agreement that allows that to occur. But that's how primarily they're looking to do the deliveries for the site. And again, that is consistent with your code. The other shared resource that's being proposed is dealing with trash. And that, again, they're proposing, and they will have a shared use agreement with the Windermere Market to utilize the dumpster. There is a plan that you'll hear in the next case where they're looking to actually improve that dumpster area to make it more effective and actually look better for what it looks like. The next two issues that I'll touch on are parking and traffic. So as the board may recall, is when the site last year went through the rezoning and future land use amendment, one of the conditions that was placed on the rezoning by the town council was that when they came through, they had to work within the town center design guidelines and meet those as part of when they do their site planning and design of their building. So we did utilize the parking standards that are within your town center design guidelines, consistent with that recommendation, with that condition. And based on what the town center design guidelines call for, it's 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Based on their size of their building, they're required 10 spaces for their parking. The town code
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
Give him a minute to go through. Yeah, he just lost connection. He'll be reconnecting. And as Brad said, that we have a presentation that's going to get into the real nitty-gritty, the look, the design, and also what conditions that they're going to be looking at And then some of the impacts relative to parking, deliveries, so on and so forth. Brad is now rejoining us.
I am back. I apologize. I just learned that when my computer goes to sleep, it cuts me off. So I will continue to move my mouse around. They just gave me a new laptop. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, so we'll go back to the parking where I left off. Yeah, so what the code allows for with parking, and this is particularly pertinent when we're working within this downtown area, it does allow for the use of off-site parking to meet the required parking standards. And you see in our staff report, there are some standards to look at when you look at providing the off-site. Basically, and one of the main ones is looking at the property where the parking spaces will be provided and to demonstrate that there's sufficient capacity in that parking space. There is an analysis done as part of the application that does show, based on the required parking standards, that there's actually 9 extra spaces in the Windermere market. So they're able to account for those 9 for the required 10. The 10th spot is the handicap space that you'll see in the next case that they'll have at the front of the building to provide for the handicap. So that's how they're providing the parking. Again, this is allowed under code, but it does require approval by the Development Review Board and the Town Council for them to have the off-site parking. But this is a request, and it is permitted with the DRB and council approval. With traffic, I will say, in the scheme of things, this is a relatively small operation. And the standard that we look at related to traffic is we do traffic estimates based on trip generations from the Institute of Traffic Engineers. And this is how we look at potential trips. And for this type of use, it's designated what's called a drinking place. You see that in the staff report. And when you look at traffic here, what you're looking at is not the daily traffic, how much happens during the whole day, because that's spread out, but it focuses on what's called the PM peak hour. So the afternoon peak hour, where there's the potential for the most traffic in an hour period. So that's the analysis that you do. You look at that most heavy impacted period. So the calculation is it provides 11.36 trips per 1,000 square feet, and Robert's showing you the calculation there. But the ITE allows for what they consider small facilities, which is less than 50,000 square feet. This facility is under 3,000 square feet. It's a little bit over 3,000 when you include the porches. So you're able to discount that trip generation by 60%, because the idea and the concept is, which I think is the case in the argument with this case, is here you have local trips, you have people in the local area that are coming there. So when we apply that discount, the net impact is we're looking at about 17 trips in the peak hour, PM peak hour. And then we look at the change from what's currently there, which is a single family home, which is basically 1 trip in the peak hour. So you have a net change of 16. In the world of trip generation, it's not a significant change in terms of traffic in that area. I will also let the board be aware that the Town Public Works Director did review this, as well as the town's police, and they had no comment or concerns with that. Next issue I'll address quickly is noise and entertainment. This use, if it's approved, it'll be subject to the town's standard noise ordinance like any other business or anybody else in the town. They won't be exempt from that. That will still apply. The other related issue goes to live entertainment. The town's code is very specific, where it prohibits what's called a nightclub. There's a very specific definition of a nightclub. It's basically a use that serves alcohol for consumption on site, has more than 25 seats, and has live entertainment. So if you have all 3 of those components, you're defined as a nightclub in the town, and that is prohibited. You're not allowed to have those 3 within the town. So because of that, this proposed use, this conditional use, he is not proposing to have live entertainment, because that would be not in compliant with the town's code. So he would not be designated as a nightclub without the live entertainment. So I want to make that clear. The applicant has also acknowledged in his plan that there will not be outdoor storage of anything other than he will have an outdoor storage or outdoor holding tank, which will be screened, and that'll be actually on the east side of the building closer to the Windermere Market. And so those are my overviews of the request. I will let you know in terms of the public notice. We, as Robert said, we received, and as you all know, because we sent them all to you, we have received lots of public responses on this request. We did our best to track, the responses that were received within 500 feet. As you know, we send out within 500 feet. And then as well as responses we got from folks outside of 500 feet. For this case, we actually also received multiple comments from some people. And in many cases, we received multiple comments from a household that maybe had 3 people living in them. So what we did in our analysis, and you see the breakout in your staff report, and I have an update for you tonight, we did break that out. So based on all the comments that we've received as of about 2 o'clock today, because we did receive more yesterday after Diane set out the updated packet, and we received more today. For the conditional use within 500 feet, and Robert's showing you the map here, which will be a little bit different, but pretty much the same. We received 11 in support and 8 in opposition within the 500 feet. In terms of the total response, so everybody that responded to us, including people outside of the 500 feet, and I will let the board know that we did not get responses from outside of the town. All our responses we got were from town residents, but they were throughout the town. We received 77 notices back in support, or comments back in support, and we received 9 in opposition. Now, the 77 and 9 number is inclusive of the 11 and 8 within the 500. So this is total of everything. And then what we did to take in account where we got multiple responses from a person or from a household, we then counted individual addresses that responded. And if we just look at individual addresses, we had 57 individual households or addresses that responded in support and 7 that responded in opposition to that. So that is my summary. As Robert said, Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. McGee and he can provide his presentation.
Is that okay, Chairman Chase?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andy, and then I'm going to be trying to play Vanna White as best I can. So I'm going to need cues from Andrew when to move the slides. So Andy, it's all you. Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, GRB, and thank you, Brad. As you guys know, my name is Andrew McGee. I am first and foremost a resident of the town of Windermere, and also along with Dr. Joseph Atta, who's on the call with us, co-founder of Windermere Brewing. So what I supplied to Robert was a slide deck that we're going to utilize to help break down in a little more granular detail what Brad was covering at a very high-end level. And Brad, thank you very much. You did a great job. Surely appreciate that. So Robert, I don't see the slide deck on my screen, so I'm not sure if anyone else sees it.
No.
Nobody sees it?
No.
Are we hearing both of these together, the first 2 together? Or are we going to address the condition
Map, Robert.
separate?
Mr. Ober, that would be my recommendation, is do them separate because, yes.
Can you see it?
No. Map.
So right now we're hearing about the conditional use?
Yes.
Only? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me try to save it as a PDF, and then I'll be able to. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. I mean,
Does Andy have it? Maybe he can share his screen.
I do have it if I would be allowed to share it from my screen.
yeah, I'll go ahead and allow you to do it. I'm sorry about that, Andy. When I did a beta test, it's showing up on mine, which usually works. But let me go ahead and give you the ability to do so. All right, go ahead, Andy.
One moment, just bringing it up.
And what I'll do for the town council meeting is save it as a PDF, so I'm able to share it.
Would that be part of our agenda packet, Robert?
It's not. The presentation was done
I mean,
last.
for the town council meeting.
Yeah, we'll include the presentation at the town council meeting.
Okay.
All right, let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
I can see it.
All right, great.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and start kind of where Brad was discussing basically what the scale of a microbrewery is, and basically specifically what our scale is. One question for the board: would you want to ask questions specifically on after each slide, or do you want to wait till the end of the deck? I just want to kind of make sure it's in the format that would make more sense to you.
I think probably while we're on each slide, if anyone has a question, just jump in.
Okay, that sounds good to me, because I mean, it will be it's not a very long deck, but it is definitely some granular information that you might want more detail on. Okay.
All right.
All right, so let's discuss what a microbrewery is. So as the industry definition goes, a small-scale independent brewery that produces less than 15,000 barrels per year. And of course, as Brad stated, that is the Orange County limit, 15,000 barrels per year. So they actually use the industry definition for a microbrewery when Orange County adopted their code. Basically, the major and primary point of a microbrewery is to supply their own tap room with cereal malt beverages or beer in the less legal sense of the word. Basically, it is the historic model that most small towns have used throughout Europe and the United States. A little bit of history about the United States prior to Prohibition. We had close to 5,000 breweries in the United States before Prohibition. Prohibition actually basically destroyed the beer industry until really the 70s when independent brewing took off again. And now within the United States, we are actually nearing roughly 8,000 breweries now in total in the United States. So we basically met where we were before Prohibition and we surpassed it. And then basically really the point of a microbrewery and tap room is to, and has always been, to provide a communal meeting place in that small pub style environment that you would see if you went to England, you would see if you go to small town America that still has breweries. So that's pretty much what a microbrewery is in a nutshell. The next slide will definitely get how that definition applies to us as Windermere Brewing Company. So basically, our taproom environment, really what we're focusing on is a small but open pub environment, family-friendly atmosphere. Now, when I say family-friendly, we're not talking about minors walking into a bar unaccompanied. Of course, that's illegal. So basically, what we're talking about is an environment that caters to families that want to bring their kids with them. They can have activities to do, all of those other things. Of course, we're not a babysitting center, so yes, you do have to watch your children if you're going to come enjoy our tap room. However, that's definitely something that we are very, very focused on at Windermere Brewing. And of course, really a laid-back attitude that reflects our town's character. pretty much just our general idea of what our taproom model really is. Now, biggest thing I want to get into, and then I'll stop here for questions. Some of the opposition does definitely use the word bar very strongly. And also, even when I'm talking to other people that maybe don't differentiate the two between bar and tap room, it's definitely a good point to clarify those definitions, and not just the textual definitions, but really from a legal and regulatory standpoint, what the big differences are between a tap room and a bar. So really, a tap room is a place to taste and sample products from the actual brewery itself. So if you think of a winery, it's the same exact concept. It's the tasting room for the winery, the tap room for the brewery. Really, at the end of the day, a bar is an establishment that serves everybody else's spirits, beer, wine that they buy. It's actually a very low barrier of entry. Really, at the end of the day, you only need a 2 COP to operate a bar and meet some health codes. So basically, a bar is definitely not something that we would describe ourselves as a tap room. And then the other thing that really sets the bar differently is there are major regulatory differences between a bar and a brewery with a tap room. Like I said, a bar really can operate on a 2 COP, and that's pretty much it, and a hope and a dream. Breweries are actually very high barriers of entry, not just from the knowledge standpoint of understanding the science behind brewing and making good beverages so you don't go out of business, but at the same time, you are federally regulated, you are state regulated, and of course, as we're talking about here, we are locally regulated within the conditional use permit as well. So if we violate many standards, and it's not just dealing with alcohol or consumption on site, we're talking about cleanliness, we're talking about USDA standards, we're talking about probably, I don't even want to get into all the granular details of everything that we're regulated by. We can lose our license very easily. We can be fined very easily. So it behooves a brewery and a tap room to actually be a very smart and functional player when it comes to the industry. So that's a really key sticking point that I want to make sure we sort out before we go down any rabbit holes. But I will stop there and take any questions on kind of microbrewery, tap room before we move on.
I have a question.
Yes.
I believe in bars that minors are not allowed in, even with their families, unless there's a food served at these bars, and they can't sit at the bar either if there is food served. Is that
is not a legal definition within the state of Florida.
Oh, okay. So you don't. All right. It's no different than with you. Okay.
Can you clarify that, Andy?
What's that?
Can you clarify that?
I mean, basically, you go into microbrewery, let's say Crooked Can. Now, for example, I do want to take Crooked Can because I want to actually take them off the table tonight, because I know one of the things that everyone wants to compare us to, or this idea to, is Winter Garden. So let's just completely forget about Winter Garden, because I'm going to tell you, Crooked Can's system is a 15-barrel system, and we'll get into that once we get into the size systems. They are a much more large-scale production facility than what we're presenting. But however, they don't have a food license. You can walk in there with your children and have a pint. Now, there are definitely rules for, I believe, times that minors cannot be in a bar. However, all of the times that we're proposing would not infringe on that, except for maybe what I'm thinking on Saturday. But at the same time, the key frame is that no minor can be unaccompanied without an adult, no matter what, in any alcohol establishment.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Move on?
Move on.
Okay. All right, so let's get into production and brew house size. So we are actually looking at between a 5 and a 7 barrel system. Really, the number there for you doesn't make any difference. We still would absolutely fall in line with what the Orange County code is and what our total capacity would be once we are fully operational. We are actually looking at 5 initial fermenters, so that's actually down from the 6 that's in the slide deck. And basically what our total capacity would be, and this is not initially, this is actually after probably year 5, would be 3,000 barrels a year out of that brewery. That would be absolutely the maximum amount of barrels we could do per year in that without at that point. So at that point, if we did need to produce more or we were selling more for distribution, that would be completely outside of the town. That would be nothing that would be any of concern to this discussion tonight. Our main focus really is, as you see there, the bottom bullet point, 75%, 25% split on at least being produced from this brew house that we're talking about tonight. And that's on-site sales, 75% on-site to distribution sales. So we definitely are a tap room only model. 25% of those off-site distribution sales would basically be kegs going to local restaurants, which really serves marketing, serves more for our better marketing for us than it does really revenue drivers. And just to clarify, because I know probably many of you on this are not brewers and do not know the breakdown of barrels to gallons to pints to ounces. One barrel of beer is 31 gallons. So 31 gallons is, if you actually think of a keg, is 2 kegs. A full keg is 15.5 gallons. So really when you're thinking about it, a 5-barrel system, or even a 7-barrel system for that matter, there's not much of a difference there in size. You're looking at pretty much 10 kegs, okay? So very, very small scale system in comparison to a lot of the other ones that are out there. All right, any questions on production and brew house size? Okay. I put this slide in. This is production odors. I did see an opposition letter that actually brought up odors. And you know what? Just because it was an opposition didn't mean, it wasn't why I put it in. It was actually, that is actually a really good point. We should address this. There are actually 2 main causes of brewery odors. The one is steam byproduct from the actual production process. That would be from malting, sorry, not malting. That would be from mashing. And that would be from the boil. Usually the boil itself is what's going to be your main steam producer, of course, and that is actually shooting off a lot of volatile chemicals, all organic chemicals, mind you, that basically just would need to actually come off of the boil so beer does not taste terrible. And then the other byproduct is wastewater treatment. So just talking about wastewater treatment, that will not apply for the plans for this location. When you're talking about wastewater treatment and foul odors, you're talking about breweries that are massive, macro breweries. So not even a discussion for this brewery. We don't have wastewater treatment on site. Byproduct odors from steam. For a system on our size, we are able to actually capture all that steam with a steam condenser. So nothing would ever be vented outside of the brewery, which means no odors will be noticeable outside of the brewery. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I do. On the effluent that's going to be stored outside, what is, that's got to have some kind of odor.
No, absolutely no. The effluent that's being stored outside is actually just brewery clean. It's not even gray water. It'll just be brewery water that we're not using. That could be coming from cleaning. Most of it's actually going to be cleaning water. The point of holding it in an effluent tank is not for treatment. We will pH balance it, but of course we will be able to get that approved by health department to actually get sent right into reclaim irrigation.
Hmm. Does any of this go into the septic tank?
Not on the brew house side. It can't. Basically, we've reached out to, and you know, we've been at this for 3 years doing a lot of research. We've reached out to many breweries across the country that are on septic, have looked at every single idea across the board, and yes, you can do it on the size system that we have unfortunately have at that space. It would not be feasible to do it at that property. So all of the brew house water will actually, that's why we have an effluent holding tank, is to side stream that water from the septic. The only thing that would be going down the drain for septic is of course true human waste on the taproom side and in our bathrooms.
Are you enlarging the existing septic system that you share with the Windermere Market?
We do not share a septic system with Windermere Market. That property actually has its own dedicated septic system, and I will defer that until we get to the building plans because that is all laid out on those plans.
Okay.
Any
I have
other
a
questions?
question.
Yes.
What type of zoning would this normally fall under in most cases?
As in commercial? I mean, could you be a little more specific?
Well, because you're producing a product and you have waste and all that,
Right.
even though you're taking care of it. But maybe that's a question for Brad. Is he still with us?
Yeah, he's still with us.
I'm just wondering, in a normal situation where you have all these different uses, what would this normally fall under if it did need a conditional use, it didn't need a variance or a special exception? What would it normally go under as zoning?
When we look at other jurisdictions and other places, for example, Orange County, it's a permitted use. Well, it has a review process in Orange County in a general commercial district. I can tell you in other jurisdictions that I work in, they are allowed as a use by right in some places in commercial districts.
Use
But
by
then
right due to what?
to do a microbrewery tap room, meaning they don't have to get any kind of special approval. They can just go pull the building permit and build it. And an example would be like I serve as a planner for the city of Newport Richey here. And that's how Newport Richey handles it, is it's just allowed as a use like any other use in it. Now, there are other jurisdictions that will have more rigorous standards. They may, limit their location, but it's really what the local government feels is the best and most comfortable and how to deal with it. There's no hard and fast rule that it should be one place or the other. And as
it's not a normal classification that's been used
right.
so much, we automatically know where it should go, right?
Usually local governments will do like Orange County did. They just call it out as a special use with special requirements.
Special exception.
Special exception or something like that. Yes, ma'am. And
And
this
that's
is a similar
similar to this.
which is similar to what you're doing tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And Jennifer, just to clarify a little bit, so when Orange County, as Brad probably even knows, when Orange County first started zoning breweries for use, that would have been back all the way when Orlando Brewing was opening. They were actually, as you probably have noticed, some of the maybe the older breweries are actually more in industrial zones. That was because, once again, Orange County just didn't know how to handle a small scale brewery. And everybody's thinking, when you say brewery, you're thinking Yuengling, Miller, Coors, big boys, right? So they did push them out to the industrial zones. And then over time, through understanding from the Brewers Association and everything else, they started realizing, okay, we can bring them into city centers, we can bring them into town centers, because they operate, I mean, we operate from a production standpoint. It is a food product. We have USDA guidelines as well, and we also have FDA guidelines. So basically, from that point of view, we pretty much fall in line with the same production level, at least for our size, as a regular sit-down restaurant would be at that point.
Okay.
All right, moving on. All right, so before I even go into this, I definitely want to make sure that everyone knows that although we are requesting this, we absolutely requested this with the knowledge that we are completely flexible on these hours. So we do want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. It's not something we're hard set on. We just wanted to at least walk into this with at least giving you a number that we can work within. So these are our proposed taproom hours. I do want to make a point already. Sunday, we already actually had a pretty big discussion about 12 p.m. probably will not work because we do want to make sure that we are being mindful of traffic. So we definitely want to probably say 12:30 or 1 p.m. already on Sunday because we definitely want to let that outflow from church get out before we open on Sunday. So before we actually get into the nitty gritty of the opening and closing times, and I'll let you guys, I mean, you guys have eyes, you can see them. I do want to basically point out two primary things. Last call for any closing time will be 15 minutes prior to all closing times. And then after 10 p.m., if we are able to get some later hours, and as Brad mentioned, these are all within the town's ordinance for alcohol consumption. after 10, if we are open past 10 p.m., any outdoor common area, that would be the backyard, back patio, or even front patio, would be shut down. So any patron at that point would have to be inside the tap room to basically alleviate any noise, any outside noise that we can control at that point, and bring everything inside after 10 p.m. So at that point, everyone can see those hours. So we are definitely open for discussion on that.
I think the ice cream stays open till 10, and when we worked on the guidelines years ago, I think we came to the agreement that 10 p.m. was as late as anything, and I don't think that's too early to close any night. And during the week, it might even be late. I don't think we ever allowed anything open after 10 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, Brad said that these hours though are within our current code.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, you said 8-83. Where is that? I can't find it.
It should be under commercial and then alcohol.
What up? Yeah, it's under 8-83, number 1. And it basically says, no alcoholic beverages shall be sold, consumed, or served, or permitted to be served or consumed in any place holding a state license between the hours of 12 midnight and 7 a.m. of the same morning, 7 days a week, except as provided herein. And that accepting clause deals with New Year's Eve and that kind of thing. So it actually provides for additional hours. But the town's ordinance, just the way the ordinance is written, again, that's the maximum. That the maximum, it's between 12 a.m. and 7 a.m. It prohibits the sale and consumption of alcohol.
You know, I know technically this is out of the design guidelines because of the kerfuffle that went on with the parking lot and leaving this as an enclave and all that stuff. But I still think that we need to honor the design guidelines, especially with hours of operation, buffering, you know, all those things that we covered in that. Even though it's not technically in there, I still think we should honor those rules.
Yeah.
I would be, yeah. There's some things to think about. I want to keep going. Think if we can come back to that.
I would just say, you know, hopefully we can avoid getting caught up too much on the hours, because we want to do whatever is going to meet the town's expectations. You know, this is just a basic proposal. Like Andy said, we're looking to meet the town's expectations here. So this is not like a make or break thing for us.
Okay, so we'll move on. We can come back to that when you guys have more of a discussion. Okay, perfect. Entertainment, noise, and smoking policy. Of course, town, as Brad already covered, town ordinance does not allow for live entertainment within establishments that primarily serve alcohol. So, of course, we'll be in compliance with that. We will definitely provide recreational activities that are in compliance with the ordinance that fit the town's character. Those can be things like giant Jenga outside, televisions inside so people can watch sports, if everyone still remembers what sports look like by the time we're open. A smoking prohibited business, and that is 100% on site. That's outside and inside. So that's another key differentiating factor between a bar and a tap room right there. And basically really allowing for a low level of noise on site. Delivery and pickups. So deliveries and pickups will be scheduled to really not conflict with noise ordinance, of course. And we're going to really focus on low peak times for traffic if we can. Of course, as we know, deliveries are not always going to come within the time frame that we asked to, but we can always work with our distribution teams to make sure that we're getting those. definitely want to make sure that although we're kind of giving an idea of some of the things that might be delivered or picked up, this is not something that's going to be an occurring basis every single week. I couldn't see a distributor picking up more than once a month from us because really the point of a distributor is picking up as much as they're buying from us, taking it to their on-site storage facility, and then at a later date, distributing that to their retail, the retail locations that are buying from them. So as you probably are aware, or maybe not aware, it is a 3-tier system in the United States. That is brewery or manufacturer, distributor, and then retail. So basically all we're doing is giving the kegs to someone who's going to hold them, and then they're going to sell them to the retail. So basically that is really the only conflict there on pickups. Deliveries are just going to be our raw ingredients for brewing from our suppliers. And most of the times these aren't coming in on tractor trailers, they're coming in on box trucks. You know, they're going to a distribution center, they're going to come in on a smaller load, just depending on what that route looks like for the supplier that day. But once again, I couldn't see raw ingredients coming in more than maybe once every 2 weeks. So not a lot of traffic that we're going to be creating for deliveries or pickups there. Any questions on that?
The wastewater, in the event we can't upcycle water, what does that mean?
Upcycling and recycling are the same. Not necessarily the same thing, but pretty much in the same league. So wastewater would be if, let's say we couldn't get approved to, let's say health department couldn't approve us to put that into reclaim irrigation. We might have to get that picked up by a wastewater tank. Now, we're not talking about a tanker truck. We're talking about basically probably the equivalent of the size of a pickup truck with those large scale holding tanks that you see in the back of the mobile detailer that comes. Basically, that would be a contingency. It is not our main goal. However, I put that on there just so we're aware that we do have contingency plans for our main plans if we can't follow through with everything.
So if you weren't able to use it for irrigation, you would irrigate directly out of the tank, your own site? I mean, where would that irrigation water be going? I mean,
no, that effluent then would be picked up. That's what we're talking about.
Right. So either way, it's a
pumped
pickup, correct?
Yeah. No, it's a pickup only one way. If
right.
We can use it
in
for
the event we can't upcycle water, so but whether it's upcycled or not, it's going to be a pickup, correct?
No, that is not correct.
So if you can't upcycle it, you're going to reuse it for brewing?
No, for irrigation on site. So that would be
on site. That
yes.
was my question. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Gotcha.
Okay. Yep. And then of course the only other pickup would be spent grain, but that's usually a local farmer that's coming in a pickup truck. We're just gonna let him pull in, throw it in the back of the truck, and he's off to go with it. And usually that's being, another way to not throw things down the drain or throw them in the garbage because that can be reused at pig farms, cattle farms, all those other things.
Okay.
All right. Beverages, basically just kind of a rundown. We definitely do plan to brew an assortment of ales and lagers to suit everyone's unique taste. We will also we have plans to produce non-alcoholic beverages as well, including, because we can brew all of these on the same system, ginger ale, craft root beer, and colas. And our typical ABVs for everything that we already pilot are between 4 and 6% for our flagship beers. And it really is our commitment to promote responsible alcohol consumption at that point. So basically going into that, we are very much so keen on responsible drinking, heavily believe in the enjoyment of alcohol, but never overconsumption. Some of the things that we can do as a brewery and tap room to really help with that is first and foremost, I kind of don't have these in order. But VIP awareness is a huge thing. Of course, as I'm going back to the regulations that I talked about, from federal, state, and local regulations, we have a certain standard to meet already when it comes to not serving intoxicated people, of course. However, a lot of breweries and tap rooms do opt to send their people through additional training. We are absolutely one of those breweries that will do that. ServSafe is one of the basically the big names in the game. We will make sure that all tap room employees are certified and serve safe, actually know the signs, actually know how to track alcohol as well. You know, say, hey, I gave, you know, you shouldn't be serving this person 5 beers tonight. You know, there has to be a lot of standards in the tap room. Those are SOPs that, of course, we will set up as operations and management, and of course, also put our tap room employees through those trainings. Another thing that we will gladly offer is free rideshare service. Those are actually available through grants from the Brewers Association and the Florida Brewers Guild. So we do have some abilities to actually work with our local guild and also our national association to get a lot of ideas, a lot of strategies, and a lot of mitigations to allow for responsible drinking on site. I do want to add as well, you know, some of the slippery, kind of some of the what if this happens kind of things that I have overheard that I definitely want to address is alcohol offsite. All right, so that is absolutely on us if that happens. I will 100% say that. So the goal, number one, the SOP is that it doesn't happen. You start that number one with having signage at your point. So basically, when we actually get federally licensed and we get state permitted, we actually have to define the boundaries that we are serving alcohol within. Within those defined boundaries, there has to be types of barriers, i.e. fencing, also signage saying no alcohol past this point. And then on top of that, it is the responsibility of the brewery operations team, the tap room staff, to ensure that no one is violating that standard. So while I can never 100% assure that everyone is going to be on their best behavior, I can assure you that from a management and operations point of view, we will be strictly enforcing those standards.
Can I ask, have you, do you have other tap rooms, breweries that you own and operate?
I do not.
Thank you.
Does your partner, the doctor?
Go ahead.
No, I do not.
Any other questions? All right, just want to move into traffic and parking. And this is going to be a very high level overview because of course it's going to be covered again in the design section, which is going to be the next hearing. So basically, as Brad mentioned, we do have dedicated spots available at Windermere Market. There is a surplus there. There is also some other things that they can do line-wise, paint-wise to actually add more additional parking there if need be. However, I'm not going to get to that point because that's neither here nor there for this discussion. There will be, as Brad said, a handicap spot in front of the brewery. And one of the main reasons, and we'll get into it, I know that they'll get into it more when they talk about the design of the building and the frontage. We actually did want to limit more spots going towards Forest. So that is why we're actually doing the request to get the parking towards Main instead of adding more parking going towards Forest and bringing traffic down Fifth, if that makes sense to everybody. So that is really what we're trying to do there. Also, that allows us to kind of keep more, well, not kind of, we really are trying to keep the natural character of the going into the residential street by not adding more and more parking. So that's pretty much just our high level overview of traffic and parking. Of course, that's going to get into probably more detail on the design side. So I probably would maybe not, if you have any questions for me, I can answer them quickly, but I think that you're probably going to get into more detail on that on the design side. And sorry if I keep looking over here. You guys are all over here, so I'm looking at you. I'm not looking at the camera. So that is pretty much our detailed overview that really breaks down all the key points in our conditional use, everything that we needed to cover for conditional use. So basically at that point, I'm going to go ahead and be open for questions, but I'll turn the reins back over to Robert.
Outdoor seating in the back, or what kind of seating are you gonna have inside and outside?
Inside seating will be planned for fixed seating. We still do not have an exact number on that. We do have a rough idea, but it's going to be around the 40 person number there, and that is absolutely contingent on that's going to be absolutely contingent on two things. That's going to be on septic capacity, and that's going to be on fire code. The second thing is if we do actually even venture into outdoor seating, which we have no plans on at opening time currently, it would be exactly what we would have to do that Dixie Cream does. We would have to work in non-permanent seating or collapsible seating of some sort.
Okay.
But all in all, the plan for the backyard is going to be just more open space, place to play yard games, place to sit down in the grass, bring a blanket, kind of thing at this point.
So is there going to be music inside the tap room, and
Hey, Daddy.
as far as on the speakers, not live entertainment?
Doing the development meeting.
As far as live entertainment is concerned, no, because we did cover that. We are currently not allowed under the code to allow live entertainment. However, will we have a low level of ambient entertainment music playing? Most likely. Will we have televisions playing? Most likely.
And would you have that same thing going on the porch or in the back?
No, we actually would not, because of course our goal for outdoor is to really just allow people to sit and have a good time. We do not want to be adding to noise or bothering our neighbors.
Okay.
I have a question, but it might be a Brad question. One of the reasons for this use for this meeting, for the conditional use approval, is because of the proximity to the church, which I understand. But it also mentioned Tim's winery. Why does that come into play here?
Okay, all right.
The town's code related to separation of businesses with consumption on site. One of the uses that they have to be separated from is another business that is also selling alcohol on site. So that's how Tim's Wine is part of this calculation. Because Tim's Wine, as you all may recall, they received a conditional use about 6 years ago now to sell wine by the glass at Tim's Wine and get the state license for consumption on premises. So the separation would apply to the church as well as to Tim's Wine.
Oh, and I guess that goes to Dixie also, right? Dixie Cream.
No, because Dixie's a restaurant, so they don't fall under that. They're a restaurant.
Because they sell alcohol, but they have food. Okay, got it.
Is Tim's Wine Shop open on Sundays at all?
I do not know that. I don't know.
I think it is.
I can just pull it up on Google right now.
What was their conditions on their use, I wonder? Do we have that information?
With their use, he did have a little bit limited hours of operation. I believe his hours were 9 p.m., but he did have a much different business model than what this is. That was really kind of the only condition that occurred with Tim's Wine. I will just say too, while I'm talking about this, I did look in the Windermere design guidelines, the adopted from 2004, and there is no mention of hours of operation or sale within the document.
Is that the July guidelines?
Yes,
July or March? July
2004, yes, ma'am.
And as
Well, it's
far
somewhere
as,
where it says no drive-throughs and all that. It's somewhere around there.
I don't believe that's in here either.
yeah, and the main purpose for the Tim's Wine was to get a 2-cop license that had nothing to do with on-site consumption. So he wanted to limit the hours just when he was able to just sell his bottles of wine, not consume on premises.
Right.
They're open 11 to 4 on Sundays, and then 10 to 7 or 10 to 8 every other day of the week.
Yeah, and they're usually not even open that late sometimes. Again, it's for that 2-cop, not consumption on premises.
What are you saying, Robert? I can't understand you.
He mostly did it so he could sell his wine in a different way. He doesn't have to go through anybody. It had nothing to do with consumption on site.
But when he got his consumption permit, assuming he has a consumption permit,
He's allowed to have consumption, but that wasn't the main intent of why he wanted to get the conditional use. It was to get the 2-cop license, which allowed him for more flexibility with the sales of his alcohol on the premises.
okay. Well, you know, in the conditional use, we're not only violating the 1,000 feet, less than 1,000 feet from a church and another alcohol business, but there's also a school at that church. So it's actually a triple whammy.
Right. Well, you're not violating. What the code says is that if a use desires to be less than 1,000 feet, the only way they can be less than 1,000 feet is if the town council approves a conditional use. So approving the conditional use doesn't violate those restrictions, but it's actually the process that's required to get an exemption from those conditions under the code.
Brad, it's my understanding that the church has not objected to this use. Is that right?
We received no response from the church, and we did notify them.
I think the back property line is pretty much on the other side of the fence from the children's playground.
That's correct. The children's playground is behind this property.
I will add real quick
The church is
that-
one of the first people that we went to when we were planning all of this. We wanted to make sure that, we were not going to be stepping on any toes with them, and that, we are meeting all of the expectations that they had for us as well. And Andy could probably comment on that a little bit further if he'd like.
Right. So I actually have, and of course, it is completely up to the church to comment on their own. So I won't comment for them, but I have sat down in person with the church and have discussed these plans with them and have actually reached out to them again leading into this process. Once again, no conflict, but I will not put any more words into their mouth because I am not them and I do not speak for them. At the same time, to address the school issue, when we get into the design plans, you'll see a lot of the mitigation that we are looking at to screen and add much more barrier between that fence line there. Of course, yes, we do know that there's a playground there, but I feel like if you're going to use that argument for us, you have to use that argument for Tim's as well. And as Brad said, it's not in conflict, it's just has to go under conditional use. I will also like to mention, just as a personal anecdote, that I do send my child to that school. I would not be opening a operation that would do any harm to children. So that's just a personal anecdote on my
I just bring it up because it's been a law for a long time in Florida, and we've, tried to follow some rules here. That's all. Nothing personal at all.
But I look at the hours of operation, and it seems like they're completely opposite.
Yes, Peter, thank you for bringing that up. I actually forgot to bring that up. We did actually put some thought into that, flipping those hours to try and be very much so on the tail end of school. And you really, honestly, you're 3 to 4 to 5 p.m. You're not going to have a high amount of traffic at that point anyways.
Can we, since Brandy signed up to talk about this, can we let Brandy have her?
Yeah, we would just have to
Minute and a
have
half.
Dorothy would just have to go ahead and do the time of 3 minutes. So it's not going to be a question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. She just ask all of her questions, and then we can go ahead and answer those, just so we can stay consistent with the 3 minutes.
And is Brandy's 3 minutes, does she get 2 sets of 3 minutes because she wants to talk about 2 issues, or would this be like
yeah, she can have 3 minutes on one issue and then 3 minutes on the other issue.
Okay.
If she still has questions.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I just have a comment, and that's just that, I don't really have a dog in this race. I don't even like beer. So, but for the sake of the neighbors that do have to live next to it, and I spend a lot of time working for the government myself, and we had a little phrase we called NIMBY, not in my backyard. So I know there's a lot of support for it in the town. However, I still wonder whether some people would feel the same way if it was next door to them. So for the sake of the people on Forest Street, I do think that the hours on the weekend should be limited at least on Saturday to 11 o'clock. But I'm not against 10 o'clock for Friday and Saturday nights as well, because for the neighbors that live there, even though all the movement will be moved indoors, I still know there's going to be cars leaving sometimes late at night, or I don't know, golf carts or whatever it is. And so for those residents, I just think the hours should be a little bit more limited at the late hours. That's all.
I would like to point out real quick, even though we are absolutely flexible in the hours, that even though, if we go back and look at the 11 to 8 for and against within the 500 feet, the two closest to our actual facility are actually yeses. So I just want to make sure that we do point that out.
And then you have 2 no's right next to them. So
right, just pointing out the yeses.
Yeah, I was glad to see that. Yeah, and there's a circle of no's around them, but okay. So we can sit here and discuss things like noise level, parking. These are notes I made to myself. Outdoor noise, which he says there will be none unless it's made by his clientele, I suppose. 40 seats, indoor only right now. And then hours of operation. So all these things are things within, that we can limit with the conditional use permit.
Yeah, with the noise ordinance, again, I think that would
True.
be applicable. And then again, remember that you have the code violations and the police call-outs as well, which is your leverage over making sure that they adhere to whatever conditions you impose on them.
Right.
So yeah, as far as decibel levels or anything like that, that's going to be really hard to manage. But if there is calls relative to noise complaints, then that is something that can be documented and obtained in order for us to follow through with the code enforcement procedure.
Wish that worked for Bird Island, but
Isn't it the noise ordinance, Robert? Isn't it like after 10 o'clock you shouldn't be able to hear anything within 300 feet or something, or less?
Correct. It's you shouldn't be able to hear it, and then again, if the neighbors are going to hear it, they're going to call.
Well, I don't have any other questions. Anybody else?
Did I hear there's 40 seats inside? Because I thought someone had said 20 or 25. 40 seats or 40 tables or
Let's clarify here. I said roughly around 40. We are not going to strictly say 40. We don't have the full, we don't have the health department's input yet on the septic. That's not something that we would look at until we have that permitting done, but it's going to be roughly around 40.
Also, the fire marshal have input on that.
Yeah. Andrew, the size of the building, is it bigger or about the same size of the structure that was there?
It is actually slightly smaller than the structure that is currently there.
So how many square feet will this be for both sides?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but it's on the agenda once we get into the design side.
It's 2,000, it's roughly 2,900 square feet of building. And then if you include the outside porches, it's a little bit over 3,100 square feet. But the building itself is a little bit over 2,900 square feet.
how many square feet is going to be dedicated to brewing? Do you know?
Trying to unmute here, sorry. Yes, so we actually do know that it is actually going to be we are primarily looking at least, I think we're at 16 to 1,700 square feet dedicated to the brew house side. if not more. I think we want 18. We just have to see how that works out on the interior layout. But to answer your question, just maybe a little more high level, we actually do need more brew house space than we need tap room space.
Okay.
So would you consider your business as more of a production or a, where people come and enjoy your product? I mean, you're mainly a brewer, right?
Just because we need more space on the brew house side does not necessarily mean that we are focusing on as a production facility. Of course, we do have to produce for our tap room. However, the reason that we need that space is the size of certain pieces of equipment that would allow us to brew for the tap room.
And Ms. Roper, that was why we also asked the question of Mr. McGee on the breakout of his sales of his business. And what we wanted to see, in terms of our review, was that his business was oriented towards on-site sales and consumption as opposed to off-site distribution. And the information that Mr. McGee has provided is he's 75% on-site sales and consumption, only 25% distribution. So he's overwhelmingly on-site use as opposed to a production facility that's focused on just shipping products out.
I'll just point out that our production capacity is so small that a distribution business model would not even be viable for us. We would go out of business.
My concern is with traffic and the neighbors and the noise. So those are my concerns.
My concern is the church, the parking, and Fifth Avenue, that patrons may leave and drive down into the neighborhood if they don't live there instead of staying out on the main roads.
I believe there will be a lot more golf cart traffic for sure.
Yeah.
But this is an unusual site in that every side of it is either public, commercial, or church property, and it doesn't make sense for it to be a residence there. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, you wouldn't want to live there if you had.
Well, it's commercial, so it could be a number of different commercial uses.
So it's the use. Well,
I don't know that we have to have a business that's got to have conditions and all this stuff, and then you got to count how many times anyone's been called, or if anything's happened, we have to babysit the thing. If we expect to have some of these issues, I'm leaning toward denying the conditional use, because I feel like the comments that I read from the close by neighbors are long-term residents. They have enjoyed the bedroom community that we've always called ourselves, and I just think we could end up having a lot of problems, and we don't want to have someone invest in machinery and all that and then have issues and then they lose out on that. So at this point, I'll probably be voting against the conditional use.
Well, I hear you, but on the other hand, in all my years around here, I have never, whoever set up this form for people to send us, should be our lobbyists in Washington, because this is like a really well-organized movement, and I have never seen so many people in favor of a business or any action in this town before. So I know it's the 4 neighbors that are close by that are the negatives, but.
Well, and like we have festivals and things uptown, and that's great. And we have the noise and the traffic and all that, but then it ends and everybody goes home and the next day comes and it's not still going, where this is something that will over and over and over and over, it's a 7-day-a-week business.
But it's so much more suppressed than some of the other stuff that we have in town, like food trucks and that kind of thing. And I think that the restrictions on their approvals are going to mandate that they help heavily police themselves. They've got a lot at stake to get off if they get off track. And
Well, I totally think they would be wonderful stewards of their business. They would consider the town. I just don't want to get something that, you know, we're just going to look back and say, what in the heck were we thinking here? Were we that, you know?
I'm actually in favor of this, except I think that we can look at that our council should consider reducing the hours to 10 p.m. Nothing else seems to be open later than that here, and probably doesn't need to be. So,
you know, I was initially concerned about parking and it getting out of control, but when I really understood the size of this business and kind of their concept, I became much more comfortable for it, and I'm leaning more towards support of this.
I still think everybody's going to park in that Forest Street parking lot. I mean, it's the closest thing to it. There's plenty of room there. Why would people park way over in front of Dixie Cream and walk around, and especially if it's raining or something like that? I mean, that's the parking lot that's going to get used. So,
right.
But there's more lighting on the parking lot at Dixie. And there's a sidewalk that goes there.
And just remember, Dixie does close at 2 p.m.
I still think people will park close rather than far. I mean, that's just you know.
But
and probably along the street.
Is there an issue with that parking?
Yeah, but
is there an issue with the parking anyways at Forest? I thought there's been big, huge berms and foliage put up so that the lights from the cars don't actually bother the neighbors.
I think it's been improved.
Yeah, the only issue we had was from Mr. Spears, and we went ahead and planted extra vegetation for any light pollution, but we've not had any complaints since that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I think that made a big difference.
Okay.
So how do we move forward, guys? Do we make a recommendation and take a vote, or?
It would be a motion and go from there. And part of your motion can be for the town council to consider amending the times that they're open until.
Right. Well, let me make a motion, and then if there's further discussion, we can have it then.
Yeah, and just so we're aware, any tie votes is a no, since we only have 4 people on.
Any what?
Any tie vote is a no.
Typo?
Tie.
Vote. If it's 2 to 2.
Oh, tie. Yeah, tie's always a no.
Is tie vote still around?
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we approve the request for conditional use with restricting the hours to 10 p.m., no later than 10 p.m. any day. Can we get a second?
I don't have a problem with the hours, but I think that they'll be self-policing if they start getting complaints.
We need a second before discussion, please.
I'll second it.
Okay, now you can.
Peter Fleck, second.
Yes.
Thank you. We have the motion and the second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All right. Let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Okay. I'm going to vote no. Peter, what's your vote?
I said aye.
Okay. So
This
it's
is
a tie.
still,
So it fails due to a tie vote.
so it'll be a recommendation of no with a 2-2. It will still go to town council on
September 8th.
September 8th
Yes, sir.
at
Yes, sir.
6 p.m.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next item, which is approval of the commercial development.
This is the, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So our next item we have, it's case number Z20-07. It's 111 West Fifth Avenue. And this is the major development review for the proposed commercial building there at 111 West Fifth Avenue. Again, as you all will recall, when this went through the rezoning and the future land use amendment, the condition of the town council for that approval was that any development would go through a major development review. And that's what this process is, which requires a review by staff, which has occurred. I will also let the board know the town public works director, the police chief, and as well as Robert have all reviewed the proposed plans. So we did get staff input to it, and then it goes to the UALF Development Review Board for a review and recommendation. And then it'll go to town council actually for 2 hearings. One will be in September, the second would be in October for the commercial business or for the building. So this request is to develop a commercial building there at 111 West Fifth Avenue. Just so it is clear as I go through this, the building that is proposed is designed based on the proposed microbrewery. So that is how this analysis is based on in terms of parking and traffic and the other parts of the analysis. So just to be aware of that. But as we said, so what they're looking to do is, and what the owners are looking to do is to construct a commercial building on the site. Actually, I apologize. The building is actually approximately a little bit bigger than I said it was. It's approximately 2,519 square feet under AC. And then when you add the porches, it's 3,847. So it's a 2,519 under air proposed commercial building. When we reviewed this, we looked at it in terms of the design standards, as well as under the standard code requirements of the town. One of the challenges that we ran into with the condition is some of the design standards for the downtown design standard you really couldn't apply because it assumed a certain way that the project was being developed, particularly related to the parking lots in the back and that kind of landscaping. But we did apply the standards to the best that we could, and where we couldn't, we used the standard code requirements for the project. You can see the site plan. Robert, can you go to the site plan, please, sir? You can go to the site plan, and you can see there's the site plan for the proposed building, the 2,519. Related to some of the issues that we had discussed and now are applicable here with the site plan. Again, with the parking, they are requesting to provide the parking off-site at the Windermere Market. There is analysis showing there is sufficient capacity there. It is allowed by the code with approval by the DRB and Town Council to do that. And then they have the handicap space there at the front of the building. We did have Public Works to look at that because of it accessing directly on West Fifth. There was no concern with that connection given the low volume on West Fifth Avenue. So there was no concern with that being located at that site. In terms of the setbacks, they are consistent with the setbacks. They're allowed to go to 0-foot setback on the side. but they're set off from the side, and you can't see the building is somewhat shifted a little bit to the north, closer to Windermere Market with it. In terms of the septic, there is a proposal to add an additional septic to the site to accommodate any needs for the tap room. That would be permitted through the Florida Department of Health, Orange County Health Department, as part of the permitting for the building. So they would accommodate for that. Related to stormwater, because this is such a small site, they basically have very little impervious being added. The building is proposed to be guttered, so all the runoff from the building will be captured, and their engineer did provide a stormwater retention area there to the side of the building on the west side of the building. So their stormwater is accommodated. They are exempt because of the size of the project, because it is so small, from any permitting through the South Florida Water Management District related to commercial development. So they do not have to go through that, but this has been engineered and signed and sealed by the civil engineer for the stormwater. Again, I will address the traffic, because that is a requirement. As I said previously, we looked at the traffic based on trip generation. Based on our review and analysis, we found that there was a very de minimis change in traffic, again, given the relatively small size of this project there at this location. Robert, can you move on now to, let's see, we'll go to the landscape plan.
Yeah, and just real quick, if you can hear me. The reason for not including additional parking in the front, and this is something that we discussed with the developers, was to make sure that we would create more land, or they would create more landscaping here to, again, buffer it even further from any sight lines from any of the neighbors. So that's one of the reasons why we argued with them over maybe getting some off-site parking in different areas, because they could have accommodated, I think, another 4 or 5 spots in the front. But again, making sure that it looks more like a residential kind of business within a residential area. That's why we decided to allow them for off-site parking.
Right. Thank you, Robert. Robert, if you go to the part where it shows the building elevations now. There we go. Yeah, we'll stop there. So there is the proposed building elevation, the front of the building. This has been developed and designed to be consistent with the architectural design guidelines for the downtown district. It does provide for the facades that are consistent, for the awnings are consistent, and the materials. So they have designed this not as a typical box commercial building. They have designed this with the design guideline architectural standards in mind, which was part of their condition of approval on there. Robert, if you can go to a few more pages forward, there are actually some color renderings where you can see, thank you, sir. There you can see the color rendering of the proposed facade of the building. You can also see, we'll kind of jump ahead a little bit, you can see the proposed landscaping there at the street with the hedge, as well as it comes around the side and to the building, which kind of creates the courtyard area in the front of the building. And there you can see the handicap space and the sidewalk with the building. So the facade, in our review, we did find it consistent in terms of the architectural design. You can go to the next slide, Robert, or next page, please. This now is to show you the back of the building, the back porch. This would be the porch on the side by the parking lot. So on the west side of the building is the open porch behind. There. Next page, Robert, please. Now this is the landscape plan, part of the landscape plan. There's several pages of it. And as Mr. McGee said earlier, at the back of the property where you see it says 10-foot wide buffer, that is the buffer that would be required under the design guidelines to adjacent properties. And we actually required them to enhance that and to enlarge it and actually to put more landscaping back there, which they did. They revised that, they added more trees, they added more landscaping. Now there is already a fence behind there there is already a fence between the two properties, but this would then be adding some landscaping to that fence line. Again, you can see there'll be hedges along the eastern between them and Windermere Market. And as we saw on the earlier pictures, they will have hedges there along West Fifth Avenue and coming down around the side, as well as in front of the small retention area, which is all required by code to be screened. I will say the one area where it's a little bit deviated from, there is a requirement that for landscaping about doing landscaping along the base of the building, along 50% of the front facade of the building. But what they've requested in lieu of doing that is they're providing the landscaping out front, out on West Fifth Avenue. And the effect of that is you don't see the base of the building by putting the landscaping there. So that is the request for that part of it. Let's see. And you go 2 more pages. There's, and these are more landscape details. And one more, yeah, right there, Robert, please, thank you. What this slide does show you is as we said earlier, the plan for this commercial building is use of a shared dumpster there at Windermere Market. There is a plan that they have is to improve that area that Robert is showing and actually make a sidewalk connection between improve the sidewalk connection between Windermere Market and this proposed commercial building. So that is part of this proposal. That work would have to go through a separate right-of-way permitting process with Public Works, because a lot of that work would be in the right-of-way of West Fifth Avenue. But it has been preliminary reviewed by Public Works, and they did not object to that occurring. It just will need to be worked out if this moves forward. So that does show you the improvement in the area. They will also be screening the dumpster that's there, which would also be an improvement to what the condition is now at the dumpster. So that is my summary of the major use and the highlights of the major components of it. We do believe it is designed consistent with the design guidelines. So the next step would be for the DRB to provide any recommendations, any comments on it. Then it would go to the town council for 2 hearings, again in September and October. So that is my presentation. I can answer any questions. I'm not sure if Mr. McGee, if he would like to add anything to the site plan discussion.
Brad, just a few things. Of course, I'm speaking on behalf of the site plan as well this evening. Just wanted to add very quickly that although the primary idea is to put the brewery and tap room within this building, for the applicant's sake, I would like to clarify that this is a open commercial concept. So whether or not the brewery taproom conditional use is approved, it is not necessarily contingent on this building. I definitely want to make sure that I put that out there in the building owner's best interest as well. And then the other thing, I think, Brad, I think you pointed out, we do have hedging on the side facing forest as well. Did we make sure we pointed that out? Okay.
Yes, you have the landscaping along Forest Avenue. Yes, sir.
Right, and then it's if you even go further down where that mouse is, sorry, Robert. No, where you were, sorry. So where that hedging is, and towards the oak trees, we would have more screening there as well.
Yes, and I do want to say, Ms. McGee did bring up a good point. That is correct. This major development would not be limited just to a proposed microbrewery, and actually the design standards, because it has to be consistent with it. The parking would be the same no matter what kind of use went in there. It's a flat 4 per 1,000 standard, no matter what type of use goes in there into that building. So if this building were approved, it could be used for other uses. Absolutely.
I have a question. On the handicap parking where it's located, and then we have the loading zone for Dixie Cream and that whole complex and this building. What's the setback on having handicap parking next to loading zones? Is there anything about that in the law?
There's not. And I mean, the loading zone would be actually fairly well separated from that. So there is not a conflict there with the loading zone and the handicap space.
Okay, so they would never, the loading or unloading or loading would never pull into that handicap spot to pick up or drop off?
I can't say they would never do that, but the designated loading, unloading would be on Windermere Market.
Would be where?
On the Windermere Market property.
And then they'll carry everything over to their place?
Because part of this plan is they make a better connection with the sidewalk between Windermere Market and here to facilitate that to happen.
Right. Brad, just to add, oh, sorry, Robert.
Yeah, right now, there's no indentation, and their intent was to make some sort of indentation so it wouldn't be blocking the roadway when they do their deliveries. Now, most of the deliveries are going to be for Dixie Cream and not for whatever goes into this building.
Right.
Because
but it is a good, I mean, it is a good distance away that it's safe.
It's safe. It wouldn't block it. It wouldn't block access to that handicap space.
Okay. I guess whoever the tenant would be would know that was handicap and not a delivery spot.
Right. And if this major development is approved, that would be a condition of the major development that has to be the handicap spot.
And this is on septic, but it is on county water? Is that
That's
true?
correct. That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does it meet the floor area ratio and the impervious?
Yes, it's well under the floor area ratio and it's well under the impervious. The floor area is 24.8%, and that includes the outdoor porches. Where's my impervious? Yeah, and I didn't write my impervious, but the impervious is well under the 45%.
Okay.
And the building height is less than 35 feet. It's roughly 28, 29 feet, but it's less than 35 feet.
The area behind,
Mm-hmm.
I'm off. Okay. The area directly behind it, is that the playground? There's no other building back there, is there?
Right, on the back of the fence is the playground on the back side of the property.
Okay.
Correct.
That's right. Okay.
And I think the rest, I don't think anything really could be built further back because isn't there like 2 septic systems in there now at this point? There's the house
Right.
and then there's the
Right.
Dixie Cream.
Right, there's the big septic system in the back, so right, they're pretty much limited to go any further to the back of the property. Correct.
Right.
I was concerned about wells because I know there's some heavy duty septic that's got to be going on in that backyard by the time these two built, between Dixie Cream and what kind of impact that would be, but there's nothing back there, I guess, to impact. So,
Right.
Well, I mean, Forest Street, I guess, if it ran that far, but it probably meets the 120-foot distance from a well.
And I mean, those are septic systems have been in place, and any new system would have to go through permitting with the health department, Orange County Health Department, and meet all the current requirements.
Was there 2 bathrooms in there before? Is that what it's like, kind of still having the same number of bathrooms? I guess.
I don't know what was in the house prior
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Not important.
It had 4 bathrooms, the current house.
But the septic system is going to be based on whatever business goes in there because it's very different if it's an office versus if it's the brewery. Okay.
True.
Right. Any commercial will be permitted very different than a residential septic system.
Also to clarify, any wells that, all the wells that are actually near or within that area all currently meet the distance requirement for the health department.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve this major development approval for commercial development. Anybody want a second?
So if this is approved, and another business comes in here, just in case the council doesn't approve the brewery, would that be a conditional use as well, based on the way this is currently zoned?
No.
I need a second before further discussion, please. Or motion dies for lack of a second.
What was the motion?
I made a motion to approve for the commercial development, the major development approval for commercial development.
I'll second it for discussion. I see on here, on this major development, in the packet, down here, it has use of building, but it does say the proposed use is under separate review. So this doesn't bind anything to the conditional use.
That is correct. That is correct. This doesn't bind it.
Okay.
This is basically a redevelopment plan as a commercial building.
Right.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
The condition only goes with a use. So,
Right.
if another realtor goes in there or another type of office, then it wouldn't need a conditional use permit.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion?
Since we do have the residents there, I would just, and it may be in here, I just haven't been able to read the whole thing, that we would have all that buffering and the buffering on the west side and the north side especially, and thinking about, of course, not knowing what would be there. Well, I don't know how far we can get into anything.
Right. And Ms. Rover, if this plan were to be approved, the landscaping plan that's proposed here would it be applied to the property, and that's how they would have to develop it out, consistent with this landscape plan that had all the buffering that showed it in there.
Okay, so does it have, I'm sorry, Frank.
Can you scroll back to that, Brad? The landscape plan?
I think Robert's got control there.
Because, the drawings, I don't really, it's hard to
So
tell.
there, it shows the landscaping down.
See, that's behind Dixie Cream is where I see that hedge. I don't see one on this side where the fence is.
Well, on the south side, we did not require them because that's abutting a parking lot. So there's no.
No, that's west, isn't it?
This is.
That where the arrow is
Yes.
now is west.
Yeah, that's west.
Right, so the parking lot sits, I'm doing my mouse so you can see my mouse. Yeah,
No,
the parking lot
yeah.
sits where Robert is. So in terms of buffering between the building and a commercial parking lot or the town's parking lot, that's not required. Again, you can recommend it, but it's not required. And as Robert said earlier, the parking lot has its own buffering with the berm and the enhanced landscaping on the parking lot.
Okay.
So what they did is they increased the buffer and landscaping here on the back side adjacent to the church playground. And then they're providing the landscaping between them and Windermere Market, and as well as providing the landscaping hedgerow along West Fifth Avenue.
Well, I know there's a gate back there. They need to be able to access everything in the back, and so you don't want to hedge there. And those two big trees, he went around them. I guess y'all went around the trees with the fence to save the trees.
Yeah, there's a fence and there's also a hedgerow.
Inside the parking?
Yes. 'Cause,
Okay. Mm. 'Cause, you know, the drawings, I don't really, it's hard to tell.
I don't know if you want to do it
Okay, so any other discussion? Are you okay with that, Jennifer?
I mean, I would like, if it's something noisy, we don't know what'll go in there. It probably will be the brewery if, past shows what'll present will be or future. So I'd like to say that I'd like that to have a landscape buffer all the way down the west side of that fence, all the way down the west side of the property. And then leave a place for where the gate is. But I'd like to see a hedge there at least. Maybe it'll break down a little noise.
So Molly, are you friendly to that?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So do we want to restate the motion? You got it, Dorothy? Can you read something back for us? Or do we need to restate it?
I mean, is that additional hedge there on the parking lot gonna maybe create some security issues or be so isolated then? You have people coming out of there at night and.
You have a hedgerow, a 6-foot PVC fence, and I think what Jennifer's asking for is an additional hedgerow on the other side.
I'm just thinking sound buffer. That's all I'm thinking. And not bamboo, please. Can we just say no bamboo? You'll never see anything once that stuff grows.
I kind of like it how it is, but.
Well, I mean, I'm not like stuck on it or anything.
I agree with Peter because the security of
that's a good point.
Going from the building. I mean.
Okay, Molly, I will draw that request for that hedge on the west side if I'm fine with that, not having it. I wasn't thinking about somewhere for someone to hide, but you're right.
Okay.
So you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, so all you ready to vote? Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, do we want to take a 5-minute recess or do we just want to power through?
What's everybody think? Let's take a 5-minute recess. Yeah. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It's 8:29. See y'all at 8:34. Or sooner if we're all four back, I guess. All right. I'm definitely going to go grab a soda real quick anyway.
And we'll wait for Brad to return.
And Peter.
And Peter.
All right, I put my dog away. We're good.
Okay. Should we?
We don't have a quorum though.
Yeah, we just have to wait for Peter Fleck.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like there's a lot of changes in the election. Hey, Brad.
That's the biggest one.
Brad and Sumter, they got rid of every Sumter County commissioner.
Really? They all lost?
Every single one.
Wow.
So there's an opening.
How could they have all of them in one election?
I don't
Wow,
know.
They don't split them up.
that's crazy.
Wow. I think Bradley's going to be looking for a new job soon.
Uh-oh.
We're recording, by the way, Brad.
I'm sorry. I was talking about myself.
What about the county? Betsy, Manderley.
Betsy lost.
You lost?
She lost?
Are you serious? Wow.
Rick Singh
Well.
lost. John Mina won.
What? Rick Singh lost?
Yeah, and then Belvin Perry lost.
I'm shocked.
Buckle up for the next big one.
So
Wow.
property appraiser, he's a Democrat then, and he had a Democrat opponent. So that's it for his race.
Yeah, Rick Singh's gone.
Wow.
And Betsy's gone? Wow.
Oh.
Betsy's out.
Y'all know what happened there.
A lot of advertising, big money advertisers.
I don't think that's what it was for
On the
Betsy.
record.
Yeah.
Monique Worrell is the state attorney, so that's a big surprise and a concern for, I think, law enforcement, but we'll
That's
see.
who won.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see the TV.
I can't see him either.
It's too far away to read it.
Okay, is Peter, you there? I can't see his chair.
Yeah, he's in.
Okay.
I'm back.
All right, so let's move on, Brad.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next case we have, it's a variance, it's Z20-10. The owners are Will and Anna Headley. The property is 826 Oakdale Street. What this variance is related to is an addition they're looking to do to their home to add a bathroom to the back of the property. This came about when they submitted for their building permit and through our review of it. The situation on this lot is that the existing home that was permitted and built in 2005 and 2006 through Orange County, I did see the permit from Orange County. It currently exceeds both the maximum floor area that's allowed. The current home and the detached garage and everything is actually at 50.1%. And as everyone knows, the FAR maximum in the town currently is 38%. So they exceed the maximum floor area ratio that's allowed on a property. And the site also exceeds the maximum impervious ratio. Currently, the impervious ratio is 47.9%, and their proposed addition, and with other site work, it would bring that 47.9 up to 48.4%. And as the board's aware, the maximum impervious that's allowed on a site is 45%. So because the site is already non-conforming and related to the floor area and the impervious, any additional floor area and impervious would have to come through a variance process to be permitted and to be allowed for it. As I said, the request is to add a bathroom on the back of the structure. The bathroom is approximately 56 square feet for the bathroom. You will see on the plans, we're also including an upstairs covered patio. That's not a concern for this variance because it's already under roof. It's already considered part of the floor area, and there's no issue or problem with them enclosing that second floor covered balcony. No problem with that. The issue is with the addition of the bathroom at the back of the property. I know Ms. Hilly, they were on the call with us. I believe they still are.
They are.
They want to provide some more information to the board.
Hi, yes, this is Anna Headley, 826 Oakdale Street, and we moved into this house 3 years ago with our 2 kids. So they're now ages 3 and 5, And having grown up in Windermere, just on 7th Avenue, we are loving being back in downtown Windermere. But as our kids have gotten older and we've been using our pool more often, we just wanted to add a bathroom that was accessible from the pool. So right now, from our enclosed pool area, you have to go through 4 doors to get to a bathroom. And with little kids, that can be a challenge. So again, this request, not knowing that the house that we bought was not in compliance, we're just requesting the small bathroom to be added so that we could just take our kids through 1 door to go to the bathroom when we're playing at the pool.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I also forgot to state, with the public notices, we received 26 in favor and 1 in opposition to this request.
Yeah, but the one not in favor, when I read the description, it really didn't have anything to do with our request, and they were complaining about drainage issue on their lot that's 2 blocks away. So it didn't actually have to do with our bathroom addition.
Yeah, and one other deal, there's no, where the bathroom is proposed to be located, it's not visible from any other properties behind a fence and in the back corner of the house. It wouldn't be visible from anywhere off the property.
Yeah, yeah. The comments we received, mostly were about the town not having adequate stormwater infrastructure in place. But with the grants that we just received, over $1 million, we are working on those issues around 9th and Oakdale, and in that basin area. So we're working on the design right now. Probably have a couple of meetings and charrettes with the residents, but we are working on that issue. But they shouldn't be penalized for what's perceived to be a town issue.
So I see again, Brandy would like to talk to this. So if Brandy's still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. So I'm not in opposition to it, but I'm not in favor of it without some sort of stormwater retention. And the reason actually is because of what the guy down the street said as well. I know that was Mr. Fry, and I know, you guys are, I heard what Robert said, I heard what everyone said, and I'm very involved obviously with the stormwater stuff that's happening on our street. I follow along with what's going on. And the reality is any house that adds more impervious surface, especially when it's already over the ratio that the town allows, is in fact still going to add water to what eventually ends up in the street. So I'm not against I mean, I have a child, I have the same issue with no pool bath. I get it. So that I'm fine with. I just think that there needs to be some sort of retention when you're considering a house that's unfortunately already over the impervious ratio of what the town allows, because we do have a big problem with the stormwater. And, we've had problems that have been complicated by construction that's happened here and swales being filled and things of that nature. But I just, that lot is in particular, unfortunately, it's the one you guys purchased, but it is overbuilt and there really isn't much retention for what is existing, let alone adding new to something that's already exceeding the concrete ratio, impervious ratio. So that's just kind of my comment, is that everything that's done cumulatively will impact the water runoff in the street from people's homes, and then that accumulates. And we have a lot of problems on 9th Street between Oakdale and Bessie, and that guy, Mr. Fry, the water does come right down Oakdale Street. I mean, I've got videos of it. And it starts about halfway up the block where you guys are, unfortunately. So that's my only comment, is that, I think there should be some sort of water retention to account for the amount of impervious that's on your property.
Yeah, actually, I had the same kind of thought processes. Is it possible to remove some of the concrete, equal at least to what you're going to be adding, so that we're not making the situation any worse than it already is?
Can we see a site plan of some kind so we can see where the concrete and retention might be?
You have to zoom in on that there.
Page 196.
This house was built in 2006. Did we have the impervious ratio in place at that time?
No, we worked on that sometime after that.
Okay, thank you.
When 836 Main came along.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
We got a grip on the the FAR and the impervious.
Stormwater's been in place, but the FAR, was later.
Right.
This is actually the reason why we really went into detached structures because of this house. And this is one of the, I don't remember about the FAR, but yeah. This is the
I
one-
mean, if some
Well,
of
not
that,
in this.
Yeah, this has a two-story structure behind it, correct?
right.
Right.
That's correct, right.
This was Burns Hovey's old house.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. So,
Yeah, that's a
It-
pool there. Okay.
right.
Right.
So I assume the deck around the pool, for example, is that pervious?
In the calculation, it's considered impervious because of the way it's installed, so it's actually considered impervious as it sits today.
So in other words, if you were to push that back a few feet and put some grass in there or even some gravel, that might at least, make it no worse than it is now. If you got 56 feet.
I'm talking to the applicant. Do you have a berm and swale around the perimeter of your property now? I see you have a gravel driveway, but do you have you mitigated at all for the stormwater?
Yeah, we haven't done anything since we bought the house. So we bought it as is and haven't done any additional improvements.
Had they put in any berms and swales around the perimeter?
Brad, can you blow it up a little bit bigger? Or
No.
whoever's got the,
Oh, yeah, Robert did. Ms. Roper, when I was out there, no, there aren't any berms or swales on that property currently.
Yeah, I looked at it today and the front doesn't have any.
Right, right.
Yeah, so, that's something. It's 56, what is it? 56
Well,
square feet?
Well, the increase in impervious is a little bit more. The increase to impervious is 67.75 square feet because of, work they're doing around the bathroom.
Right.
So, yeah, so the impervious is 67.75. So if they would remove a 10x7 area of pool deck or something else out there, they could offset it. And that was a discussion we did have with the head lease. If they can offset the increase, then it was not an issue. We can move forward.
Right.
Mr. Headley, have you consulted a civil engineer and investigated possibly underground compensating storage?
No, we have not engaged with a civil engineer at this point.
I think you could overcome a lot of these objections if there was a possibility to basically put some underground retention or something like that to make up for any additional stormwater impacts you have.
And Mr. Fleck, actually, there's enough room on their sides and the front where they could do above ground as well. It wouldn't have to be underground.
Yeah, either way, but I think they could create compensating storage to overcome these impacts and maybe even get within the FAR guidelines.
Well, the impervious wouldn't address the FAR. The FAR is based on the building envelope, the size of the building.
Yeah.
But we could mitigate the impervious by doing some retention or
Correct.
you're
Correct.
saying we could get them closer to compliance in that part, in the impervious?
Right. You could condition the variance if you so chose to require them to do stormwater retention for the site. The reason why we weren't able to place that condition under your code, it only triggers, when somebody's redeveloping, somebody's building something new, they have to add 125 square feet or more of new impervious. So they were under that threshold for us as staff to be able to say they had stormwater. But you all, through a variance, could require the stormwater if you felt that was appropriate.
And it's 160 by 80?
Yes, ma'am.
So
Well, living somewhere where that is in a flood area, I definitely think that that's a good idea. That we ask them to make the property less impervious.
Sure, we can, with that condition, can explore those options, absolutely.
Yeah, that's doable.
Yeah, and I don't think it's unreasonable. It would be an awful thing to have two little kids and one needs to go and the other doesn't want to get out of the pool. You're stuck. And really the only thing is the impervious. So if you can mitigate, I mean, I know the floor area, but other than,
We'll absolutely yep, we can look into mitigating that, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
could
think
you,
I'm
I mean, I
fine.
guess, could you approve it conditionally based on that?
I would.
I would as well.
Well, are we talking about removing impervious structure or just compensating to an amount that it doesn't impact the site?
I think just compensating for it.
And, if the engineer finds that you're still, I don't know if you'll need to come back to us or not. I don't know. If we say it right now, maybe you won't, but I guess we could make a target impervious goal.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I make a motion that we approve the site conditional upon an engineer creating compensating storage to mitigate the impervious amount that's over code. It's kind of complicated, but.
Mr. Fleck, can I just make a suggestion with that, which I think will help? Instead of just the area over code, I would suggest the engineer just do it for the site as a whole.
Yeah, bring it back to code.
Right.
It's really close to 45.
I think that's what he was saying, but bring it to code is what Peter was saying, right? So the amount to store the amount that it's over. Okay, yeah, I see.
We want to.
I'm with you now. You're right,
We're on
Brad.
the same page. Just however you want to. If someone wants to dumb it down a little bit.
Okay, so we're making a motion that we are approving the floor area ratio increase, but we would like the impervious area ratio to be engineered to meet code.
Ms. Earle, I believe it was that the position was you would allow the 51 or the 48.84% with an engineered retention plan that accounts for all the impervious on site. That was my understanding.
There you go.
Okay, hold on one second. Since there was no second, there is no motion. It's going to die for lack of seconds, so you can talk it out, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what I meant.
Well, are you saying bring them to the 45% from the 48.4 that they are now?
Yeah, by using storage or removing impervious areas and creating non-impervious areas.
The only way they can get from the 48 to the 45 would be, as you said, Ms. Rose, would be removing some of the impervious areas. The storage wouldn't reduce that number. It would be reducing concrete or pavers with gravel or sod. That's how they would get that to 45, right?
That's the only thing I know how to do, but Peter, you seem to think there's a way of doing storage that I don't even know about, so.
Well, the calculations we use are square feet, basically, not cubic volume. Is there volume that comes into our?
Yeah. The cubic volume comes in when you do the analysis to determine how large these retention areas need to be. Right.
As far as pervious to impervious, there's no way to get there because we're dealing with square footages.
Right. Here we're just dealing with square footage, so that's has nothing to do with storage. Right.
So earlier you said if they reduce their covered, their pervious or impervious area 125 square feet. Is that what I heard Brad say?
No, in the code, if they increase their impervious by 125 square feet or more, then they're required to do a stormwater retention plan.
Oh, so
Because
it doesn't fall under that.
that's why we couldn't require that as part of
Oh,
our.
I got you. Okay. I
This
was
is-
thinking that would get us
This
where
is
we wanted to
opening
be.
a huge can of worms, and I think we, anyway, I think we're headed.
So if we required that they did a stormwater retention plan, even though they're doing 56, we're sort of getting where we want to get. We want them to retain their 1 inch of water on their property like everybody else has to do now.
Right. Right. And then that impact could be with their stormwater plan. They'll have some deeper swales than what you see in other places of the town because of the larger area of impervious.
Okay.
Which
That's
would be good.
fine. Yeah.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to approve with an engineered stormwater plan that meets the city guidelines. The town
I'll
guidelines.
second that.
I understand that. That's good.
Okay. Is that truly understandable?
Yeah. So what I take that as is when they, with their building permit they've already applied for, they'll have to provide also an engineered stormwater plan, like we require of everybody that's building a new house, to accommodate for all the impervious on site, including the addition.
Okay.
Right, to accommodate for the overage of impervious or whatever.
To account for everything on site, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good idea.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good to
Well,
me.
that's a project. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I guess we got everybody.
Peter?
I said aye, sorry.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Okay, we're just a recommending board. You
Thank
still
you.
need the council to approve our decision on whatever day they're meet next. What is that?
September 8th.
Okay, September 8th. So good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and this is the final one.
Last but not least here.
And we do-
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Albert.
We do have a speaker on this one, but it's going to probably be after the presentation to speak on behalf of the neighboring property.
Right.
And I believe the applicant is on as well.
Hey, Robert, do you want to?
Yeah. Peter Fleck has worked. He might want to disclose what he worked on for this project, but based on our conversations, there is no conflict. He is not looking to gain any financial benefits from a decision one way or the other. But I believe he has worked for this family or the property before in the past. But as it relates to the question at hand, again, he's not looking to get any financial gain from that. And Peter, if you want to expand upon what kind of work you did for this property, just to clarify it and just to show that there's no appearance of impropriety.
Yeah, we just did some boat lift repairs and dock renovation work for him.
Yeah, and this is relative to a variance for their garage in the front, which Peter has no interest in.
That's right. And all that work's been completed and finished.
Okay.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, this case is Z20-11. The owners are Louis and Janet Aschenheim. They also have a representative, Dirk Arache, and they are on the line with us today. The property is located at 11214 Lake Butler Boulevard. And this is a variance request to enlarge the existing non-conforming detached garage that's in front of the home. This home has an existing non-conforming garage that's in front. It's non-conforming for two reasons. One, it's in front of the home, and the code currently requires detached garages to either be in the side or the rear yard. And two, it doesn't meet the required setback. The current detached garage is at 11.5 feet from the side property line as opposed to the required 14.2 feet. So there is the reason for the nonconformity. As the board's aware, the town code limits expansion of nonconforming structures to no more than 10% of the floor area. And how we apply this is we apply it to the nonconforming structure itself. So we look at 10% of the guest house. And so that would allow it, without a variance, to be at 138 square feet of an addition. The applicants, though, however, are requesting an addition of 1,474 square feet. So they're basically requesting to double the size of the detached garage. And what they are doing is they're adding some bedrooms into the detached garage. And I will let the applicant give more details with that. But that is their request, is to basically double the size of the detached garage and then place some bedrooms, living area in there. They're not adding a kitchen as part of this addition. It's just bedrooms and a bathroom, so it doesn't qualify as a full dwelling unit with this addition on its own. We did send out notices for this request. The response that were received were 14 in favor and 2 in objection. And as Robert said at the start of this case, one of the objecting parties is the adjacent neighbor, Mr. Scher, and Mr. Scher's attorney is on the line with us. He did submit a letter of objection, which you have as part of your record. And I believe after the applicants provide their information, their attorney would also like to provide some statements to the board. With that, I'll open for any questions or turn it over to the applicants.
Brad, what did you
Yes.
say? The reason for the variance is because?
From the code perspective, it's because it's a non-conforming structure. The garage is in the front, which now they're required to be in the side or the rear.
Okay.
And also, the garage does not meet the required side setback.
Oh,
I
it
will
does.
say that, yeah, it's the current garage is at 11.5 feet. It's required to be at 14.2 feet. I will say, and I didn't say this, and I should have, the addition will meet the setback requirement. It also will be within the maximum FAR and ISR for the property with the addition.
Okay, yeah, so it's a setback from it that's 3 feet short, 2.5 feet short, and
Right.
And then the fact that it's in front of the house and we really want them behind or in the side. Okay.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Will would the addition meet the front setback?
Yes, it meets the front setback and the side. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Is it right at the 25 or is it further back?
It's further back. It's further back.
It's a huge lot.
How are we okay with the detached structure with bedrooms in it? Isn't that excluded or?
No, there's provisions in the code that's specific to a accessory dwelling unit. And a dwelling unit defined under the code, you have a living area, a cooking area, and a sanitation area, a bathroom. In this addition, you have to have all 3 of those components to be a dwelling unit. In this addition, we don't have all 3 components. We have the bedroom and the bathroom, but not the cooking or the kitchen for there. So there's nothing that prohibits that specifically in the code. But that is something that you as a board can consider if you're comfortable with that or not.
So we allow mother-in-law suites, but that's because they have to be attached, like with a covered walkway.
No, mother-in-law can be detached, but they, again, like a detached garage, it has to be at the side or the rear of the property. They're limited in size. They can't be any more than 45% of the size of the main structure. They also have to be designed. So they have their own standards and requirements for a mother-in-law suite. That's a full dwelling unit.
Well, this would probably meet those except where it's located.
Yeah, be pretty close, yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So it can be detached if it doesn't have a bathroom, a kitchen, and a bedroom, if it only has 2 of those? What
Well,
we're
it's
saying.
not, it can be attached or detached. That's the issue. Having all 3 determines whether it's just an accessory structure or it's an accessory dwelling unit.
Wow.
It becomes an accessory dwelling unit if it has all 3, the bathroom, kitchen, living, sleeping area, then it's a dwelling unit. So there's additional restrictions and limitations on an accessory dwelling unit.
Well, the building they're attaching this to, that has some type of guest suite, it said. Does that have a kitchen area?
We'll have to
Can
ask
this be a standalone house?
I don't know
Yes,
the
it
answer to that.
does.
Yeah, it has a sink and there's a counter, a microwave and like coffee pot and teapot because we're tea and coffee people. And it's really, but it is more guests because we have a huge family that are all over the world. And when the children come and my nieces and nephews come from everywhere to spend time, that we really just don't have the room. So for us, we didn't put up the structure. We were just learning and understanding that where it wasn't wide enough there on the side by the step. It didn't meet the variance. We didn't know all of that.
I mean,
But the bedroom, there's only one little bedroom and a bathroom upstairs where it is, and it can only have a double bed in it. It's that small. So it doesn't really meet the requirements that we need as a huge family.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
The main house is where all of the cooking or anything else happens, but tea and coffee when you get them in the morning, and if they've been up playing cards or dominoes and things, they only mosey out late. These are young adults. When you get a few weeks of vacation to see your cousins and your brother and sister coming up from Jamaica or Canada and meeting here, because this is our family home. That's what the need is.
Right. And when you consider that some of our families in the UK, some live in Canada, some live over on the West Coast, some live in Jamaica.
Yeah.
This is kind of more of a central
so
point
that's the reason
for all of them. Plus, we've also got Disney and Universal and SeaWorld and.
Yes, we needed the bedrooms and for them to be able to play cards and get together with one another, but not more to as they come back to the main house for meals and stuff. You know, that's not the issue. It's just we have a pool between the main house and where the structure is. We can't build off
from the main
house that way. And we can't build, if we build onto the home going towards the lake, then that's not very nice to our neighbors on either side, because that's definitely would be more intrusive in terms of their sight lines and everything.
Plus the ground slopes from the main house down to the lake, it slopes quite substantially. So that would make it very difficult.
But it could be done. I mean,
I suppose it could be done. You'd have to build it up.
But then it would be, as I said, intrusive to John and Joan on one side, and I would think on Dr. Shore on the other side. So that's what we thought. Well, we'll just do it in the front structure since they're really just going there to sleep, and you know, it's really just for the bedrooms and bathrooms to ease that on the house. Most of the time, it's empty and will remain empty.
We had an issue with septic tank for the detached structure.
We didn't put it up.
Which we discovered last year, that the septic tank had been built underneath the floor of the garage.
Yeah.
So we had Brownie, they came in, they collapsed it, they filled it in, whatever they needed to do.
We didn't know it was
and they put a new septic tank. And when we talked to them about the new septic tank. We said this was what we were hoping to be able to do. So
put
can we
in-
make sure that the
Is it
new
big
septic tank will be big enough to cope with, if we got approval, what we want,
Yeah.
what our plans were?
Yeah, so that's been put in, grassed over and landscaped. So that, I think in terms of the ease of having it there, and I also want to say, because I'm not sure if the worry is that it would be turned into some structure like an Airbnb, and I just want to lay all those fears, because the home, and this is how we grew up. We grew up going to my parents on the North Coast in Jamaica, and that was a family home we all went to on a weekend. And we had the beach, and we had the Runaway Bay golf course, and this is how we grew up. So, and we're so far apart, and what COVID has done, and definitely said that, it's just for families. It's all about being able to spend time when we are going to be able to spend time. I mean, we have another second home, and it's in Bermuda, and we are missing it a lot. But that is also a 4-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom condominium on the beach, on the South Shore. We don't rent that out. We do not. It's not an Airbnb. It is our home. I want to stress that this is our home.
At the moment, with the pandemic going on, we had at one point in time, about 2 weeks ago, 11 people
Yes.
staying in the house. So as you can imagine, we're all sort of falling over each other as far as beds go.
Yeah, but it's about family. So, and that's why we were hoping to have it done this way, where we can get the bedrooms and bathrooms for nieces, nephews, and cousins. You know, because, you know, it's just an important thing to be able to spend time when you can. And so that's why the proposal.
Okay.
Okay,
By the way,
thank
I
you.
apologize for the fact that we don't have that you can't see video. For some reason, my camera's decided it's not going to work now.
So sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
We hear you though.
Yeah.
I have a question for, I don't know, maybe Brad or Robert or Frank maybe knows. Was this the existing that's non-conforming now because it's in front? Was that permitted at the time?
From my research, it looks like it was, and it looks like it's been there for many, many, many years.
Like 05 or something?
Oh, like I'm looking at like 1960s possibly. At least that's when the home was built, was in 1960.
Yeah, Orange County shows it in 1960.
Yeah, so it's been there for a long time.
If I may, I'm the home designer, Dirk Arache. There was a question about the dwelling unit and the 45%. This would qualify for that due to the existing, whether there's a little kitchenette area, et cetera. It kind of ties together and expands that. So the FAR, the ISR would all meet. Unfortunately, due to the lot, due to the pool, due to the slope, and due to the triangular nature of the configuration, there's no other place to get this square footage. And looking at the privacy from the street, there is no safety issues in terms of blockage. There are no other, impacts in terms of a visual. It's a very private, large estate lot, front gates, etc., and a lot of vegetation. And we're just kind of enhancing the lifestyle of this structure. If the original structure, and also the new structure, is about 17 feet away. It's not 11 feet away. It meets the setback, and then some. I think it's closer to 45 to 50 from the front property line, and probably about 60 feet from the street. So if that answered your question from before.
So 45 feet from your front property line?
It's exactly 40 foot 10 and 1/8 inches. My apologies, close to 41.
I'm sorry, who is
The
Dirk
addition.
speaking?
Dirk
Can you
Arace.
I'm sorry?
ARACE, Dirk Arace, the designer.
Designer?
Dorothy, you're gonna be able, you will see it on the video.
Yeah, I drove by it and it's a huge lot. And this is set way back. There's no front setback issue here.
Yeah, just remember we do have a public comment from the attorney from the adjacent property owner.
Yeah, like to hear that.
And I would like to just add one more point to that note. I did read that comment with the square footage in the ISR. The total lot on the tax records are noted in the document, the 58,370. If we do use the smaller number of 41,000, ISR and all of the FAR numbers. So we can use either one. I just used what was given from the tax records, but we still are under even with the smaller lot size.
So you're saying the lot size is really 41,000, not 58,000?
Well, I recalculated it. It's closer to that number, but what's on the tax record is 50. That's what's on the tax appraisal. That's what I typically use as value.
Right. The difference, Ms. Rose, is the tax collector or tax property appraiser, he includes the area of the lot that goes out to the lake.
Oh, yeah.
So when we do the calculation for building permits, we only count the area landward of the normal high water line.
So
we do the calculations.
If we readjust that and use the 41,544, we are under 15,790 is the FAR and 18,699 would be the ISR, which is still under the 22,180 allowed and the 26 allowed. We're still way under. This is a very large.
In those you're including all the buildings on the property. You're saying the impervious for the whole property is still well under the limit?
Yes.
Yes.
Our proposed is 18,100 square feet. Driveway, pool, AC units, walkways. But we're allowed, 18,699. So we're closer to the 44%. I mean, we can adjust that number, obviously, in the document when we go to it.
Okay.
So if the main reason we're here tonight is because it's a non-conforming use, a non-conforming detached garage currently, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
I'm getting confused by all this RSR, FAR stuff, so, okay.
You're correct.
And still with the new, I get the lakefront thing and how they measure out into the water on the property appraiser's website, but, so anyway, okay, let's hear from Dr. Schur, and is that the only person we have to hear from?
We have Mr. Jonathan Hewells, who is the attorney for the neighbor. I believe you would like to speak.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening, Chairman and fellow board members. My name is Jonathan Hewells. I am with the Lowndes Law Firm, 215 North Eola Drive, Orlando, 32801. And I am here on behalf of Mr. Schur, who is the adjacent property owner to the west of the Ashenheim residence. Mr. Schur resides there. And after careful consideration of the application, the request, and the supporting materials, Mr. Schur is in opposition. And he's in opposition for a number of reasons, but the principal ones are based on the size of the request, and that it's essentially more than doubling the size of the existing non-conforming garage and guest suite. He's in opposition because of the character of what's being requested, which is to add 4 additional bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So effectively creating a 5-bedroom suite with 3 baths that could hold up to 11 people. And he's in opposition because of the proximity of this request, in that it is very near the adjacent property line. As was mentioned earlier, the existing structure is less than 12 feet from the property boundary. And I've just heard testimony that said that the expansion is going to be a little bit farther out, but it's still going to be just feet away from the shared boundary. I want to remind the board that it is the burden of the applicant to provide you with competent, substantial evidence that the applicant meets all of the criteria for a variance. They have to meet all. They can't meet just some. It has to check every box. And we believe here that there just hasn't been, that burden has been met with many, if not all, of the criteria. First of all, we don't think that there's any unique or peculiar physical surrounding shapes or conditions of the property that would support this. If you look at an aerial map, the Ashenheim property is very similarly situated to all of the other lakefront owners, in that there are large homes constructed on these lots that prevent an accessory structure that's being proposed from being built on the side yard or rear yard of the parcels. Additionally, we think that because of that, they also don't meet, that all the other parcels are similarly situated to them. We also don't think that there is any practical or economic difficulties in carrying out the strict letter of regulation. That's another criteria that we met. Here, there's already a very large, beautiful, existing primary residence that Ashenheims live on. They already have a guest suite. And just because they want to house their family here and they don't want to do it in the very large residence and they want to build 4 additional bedrooms, we don't think it meets that criteria. We also think that there is a very large likelihood that the proposed variance will substantially diminish property values in the vicinity. Adding 4 additional bedrooms here is going to change the character of the area. This is a single-family residential area. And while I appreciate the Ashenheim's intent, there's no guarantee that they'll live here forever, where this structure, if approved and built, is going to be here for a long time. And who's to prevent the next person that owns this property from turning it into some type of Airbnb or rental? I mean, it's set up perfectly for that. There's 4 independent bedrooms that are going to be serviced by bathrooms. And in the vicinity of where we live here, I think that, unfortunately, it may be a likelihood. We also think that the request is another criteria not in harmony with the general intent of the Land Development Code and the specific intent of the relevant subject areas of Land Development Code variance is being sought. I'm just going to quote to you, and this is how it discusses these non-conforming structures. That's the subject of this request. This is from the town's code, section 10.01.03. It is the intent of this land development code to permit those nonconformities that existed on June 10th, 1975 to continue until they are removed, but not to encourage their survival. Those few structures shall not be enlarged upon, expanded, or extended, end of quote. And here we're talking about a request to not only expand it, but substantially expand it, twice the size of what it's currently constructed as. Also, we think that there is a potential of floodgates here, where approving this variance will encourage other requests of a similar nature, where folks want to substantially enlarge non-conforming structures. And just a couple of other points. We think there are some discrepancies in the application. I think one of them was discussed about now is just the total acreage. Maybe that doesn't have an impact on your review, or maybe it does. But also that there is an additional structure that was not shown on the site plan, and that is located in the rear yard. It's red. It seems to be 2-story. We submitted photos of that in our letter that was distributed to you. And, we just think, well, there's already an accessory structure back in the rear yard. that needs to be accounted for, needs to be explained, and it just shows the further discrepancy. So we're not opposed to, I mean, we are opposed to this as been submitted to you. We think it's too much. We think it's just too much of a change, and the intended use, I think, could be accomplished in another way. I mean, whenever I have family over, they stay and live in our, and we're a little uncomfortable for a bit of time, and it leads to laughter and jokes often. But to go and say that that's the basis because we want your family to be comfortable to build 4 additional bedrooms on a single family residential lot, we just don't think it meets the muster. So we're asking you to deny this request or recommend deny this request. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about anything I just discussed. And I appreciate your time. I know it's late in the evening. You've been at it for a long time. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Does Dr. Schur want to
Can we address
speak about?
the little structure they were talking about on at the front down by the lake? Was a little firehouse.
It's a child's
firehouse.
It's not a 2 stories. One. It was a single.
Excuse me. Hold on. Please, I'm gonna have to mute you. It's still the neighbor's turn to discuss and hear from the public. If we need any answers from you,
Thank you. Sorry.
turn it over to you. So, Dr. Schur, if you have any additional comments.
Don't believe he does. He'll raise
Understood.
Does anybody have any questions for Jonathan? Okay. All right. Mrs. Ashman, we'll go ahead and let Dirk or Mrs. Ashenheim respond to the structure down by that I saw the pictures of.
And one at a time, please.
Yes.
That was a small firehouse. That's what a child built one, but it has been sort of taken over by lizards and was something we were slating to remove, and was removed.
It was actually removed.
It was
this
actually
morning.
removed because it wasn't being used, and my grandson is much older now, and he thinks he's too old for that anyway. So that it was, as I said, it was just a playhouse for a child. It was firehouse number 5 or something like that. It was and that has been removed. There actually isn't any structure there. I hope that helps. And it is 5 additional bedrooms.
No, it's not. It's not 4 additional bedrooms. It's 4 bedrooms.
In the structure.
Because the bedroom that is in the current structure will not be a bedroom.
Does that make sense? And because it's called to be much, if it only had, it could only hold a double bed, and a 2 are married, and it won't even work for one couple. Never mind any. That was the reason why.
Okay.
I'd also like
Here's our girl.
Sorry, I'll just address a couple of the points Jonathan made. Thank you for that information. The actual setback for the new structure would be, if you look at the site plan, it's not 11 feet, it's going to be 16, and the other corner will be 19, and I believe there's 20 to 30 foot tree buffering that, so visually there's no impact. And the other idea that you mentioned about the physical characteristics of the lot, there are no other real ample places to attach this. If you go in the back right, we could build 1,500, we could build 2,000, we could build 3,000 square feet, but we don't want to do that to block side angles and to keep the light and to keep the nature of the lake intact. We don't want to build a 2-story box behind the house. As well, if the pool was there, the house was there, the front house was there. If this house was over by 3 feet and built there, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be non-conforming in that respect. So just trying to get the best location for the structure. We could, again, with the FAR of the main house, we could attach something to the main house of up to almost 3,000 square feet. We don't want to do that. The footprint is actually about 750. So it's not really 1,400 square feet. It was it's a 18-foot wide, and we went, an 18-foot wide section. You can see the left-hand existing side and the right-hand existing side. And also, if you look at the map next door, there's a front structure that's closer to the street than ours. 11206 on the, I don't have the map in front of me. If you go down the street toward the west, 11332, there's a front structure. Also on, I think 11340, there's a front structure. There's several, there's 4 to 5 on this street of homes. Yes, they are smaller. Yes, they are simple garage structures. But, you know, whether it has 4 bedrooms or 1 room, or whether it was a garage, it would still have the same visual impact. So there won't be any quality issues, there won't be any sound issues, because it's all going to be private behind the gates. So I hope that alleviates the neighbor. We're trying to do the best we can, and you know, this seems to be the best location.
Okay.
A couple questions for either Brad or. It's my understanding that short-term rentals aren't allowed in Orange counties. So what is the concern?
Mr. Fleck, that's no, short-term rentals are. It's preempted by the state. Orange County did get approval a few months ago that reallows short-term rentals in Orange County. So short-term rentals are allowed in Orange County. However, the town related to accessory dwelling units, accessory bedrooms, the town in its code, because they're not the principal structure, they're accessory, it does prohibit the renting out of these accessory units. So under the town's code related to accessory structures, accessory dwelling units, they cannot be rented out, they cannot be sold separately, they're intended for family members or people related to the household to stay there. So so there are protections in the town code related to that, related to accessory structures.
So if this property sold, that's not really, under the current circumstances, a concern.
It would be an enforcement thing on the town's behalf to find if that they were be rented out, but that code would apply to any owner of the property, correct?
There you go. Okay.
May I just comment, just because there's a law in place that, I mean, does the city really want to be town really be responsible for enforcing that? I mean, I understand that there's a law against it, and you can go on Airbnb anytime and find multiple homes in many areas that it's not permitted that you can go and rent. So that's not our primary concern anyways. It's just that it changes the character, and it's the close proximity to this property. Any of the buffering, if you look at an aerial map, vegetative buffering is provided by Mr. Schur's property. It's not on the Aschenheim's property. So does that mean Mr. Schur is now burdened in the future to maintain a vegetative buffer so he doesn't see this structure in the front yard? I mean, if there is a concern about housing family members here, then they should seek an expansion of their existing residence and put them there where it's more appropriate than putting it in this front yard and within just feet of Mr. Schur's property. And that's our position. And the only other point is I just heard the applicant say, well, there's other houses in this vicinity that have non-conforming structures in the front yard. Granted, they're smaller. Then our concern is, quite frankly, that this opens the floodgates for all of those property owners to come forward with similar requests that in sooner than later, it really changes the character of this area because you have essentially 2 homes on each of these lots. And to me, I just don't think they've met the criteria. This board has to find that each of these individual criteria have been met here. And I don't think the burden has been met. And with that, I'll just close and push the mute button. Thank you.
Okay, can I just respond really quick and then we'll be done? I know it's late. Thank you for those points. The main thing about variances, they're individual cases. I've been through several of them. I'm sure you have as well. I know the board has, obviously. One variance does not mean forgiveness or allowance for another variance. It's case by case, and that's clearly noted here. Just because one property can have it doesn't mean the other property can have it. So there's no, that point just doesn't, it doesn't occur. It's up to the board to decide that, of course. And we're open to suggestions as well. That's why we're here. So appreciate that.
Okay, well, where the main house comes out toward the road up the side of the pool, did you consider doing an addition there attached to the home?
We had, yes. It just means the area above the existing rooms over the garage is separate from there. So now we have basically three separate areas, the main house and 2 separate guest houses. And that just functionally doesn't work. That's the reason for attaching it.
But it would be attached to the house. So it's really
Yes.
just, it's
You
still
could enter.
2 structures.
So you'd have guests in one part over the new structure by the house, guests over the existing structure over where it is currently, and they would be separate. So we're trying to keep everybody in one building together. That is an option. I'm not saying it's not. It's just we're trying to, we have the land, we have the area right now. It's just a nice vacant piece of grass. And unfortunately, the 150 square feet, that's 10 by 15, you know, doesn't allow much. And we don't want to rip up the roof of the existing structure and maximize that. The downstairs, I believe, is 900. And if we ripped up the roof and made a 2-story box, which we don't, we want the dormers, we want the lower roof, we want the cozy cottage feel. And that's what this achieves.
Brad.
Yes, sir.
Question for you. If the owner were to attach this addition to the existing 2-story block house, would they be here? Because still the garage or whatever that is now, that other detached structure is still, I mean, they would still have to come in for a variance.
No.
No, if they're not touching the attached garage and they're just doing an addition off the existing house, no, they would not have to go before you because they're not changing the nonconformity and they're just expanding the conforming house. And that is the discussion Mr. Arcree and I have had.
Okay, I thought
on those alternatives of doing the attachment to the home as opposed to going to the garage.
right. Okay.
Yeah, because I can only remember one other time that somebody was trying to get, and they were building, so they were trying to put a mother-in-law suite, which was basically a duplex, in the front or the side yard, front side yard, and they ended up having to split the property to be able to do this. Because it couldn't get on the side of the house or the back of the house. And the whole point of the code was to prevent multi-family residents in town. It's an old code. It's been around a long time. I'm not saying it's right, but that's why it's there.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to deny the variance on the non-conforming building.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? Peter? Peter, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just, I'm kind of not there. I'm not that concerned about property values declining on Lake Butler Boulevard, but, and there are other structures kind of in that area that have, you know, kind of big garages with living quarters on top of them on that street. I've seen them. I've seen that house, and you know, it is fairly buffered. I didn't really pay attention to whose property the buffering was on. I'm kind of okay with it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for anyone who's spoken already? Okay. All in favor of the motion to deny?
Aye.
Aye. And Molly?
No.
Okay. And Peter?
No.
Okay, so it's a tie. So, which is a no. So we are recommending board, and the town council would be hearing this on September 18th, correct? 19th.
Does that turn into an acceptance because we had a tie and the no failed?
Yes, so.
It'll just show as a 2-2 tie. There's really no action from the DRB that could be taken tonight because of the fact that there is only 4 members.
Okay.
Unless there's some sort of different motion that would be able to sway another DRB member for either a denial or not a denial, but for a approval of the variance. Correct, Brad?
Yes, you can do it that way, absolutely.
Other than that, it's a 2-2, and you know, whether there's motions for a 2-2 to approve, then it'd be denied in that manner too.
Right.
So council will just see it as a 2-2 tie, which they can take it either way.
Okay. Does anybody want to discuss this any further, or should we just move on?
I think we'll just move on.
Okay, I agree. Okay, which is to adjourn. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
You may.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Brad,
So
you can't.
we have a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
all.
Good night.
Thank you all.